Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Next Gen Racing GT3 series as hosted using Assetto Corsa competition on PC. And tonight marks round 2 of the season, and what a round we've got ahead for you. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about our times and our approximate schedule for tonight, all times being in British Summertime or UTC +1. In 10 minutes time, we'll be getting underway with the driver's briefing. You'll be able to listen in on that as Kevin Smith, our lead steward, with regards to the driver's briefing, will give our drivers the ins and outs and what to expect. Then 5 minutes after that, at half past the hour, 7:30 in the evening, we'll be getting underway with qualifying, a 15-minute session to determine who will be on pole for the race. And then at 7:45, we'll be getting underway with a 75-minute race, the one race of the evening, and indeed the one with the strategy involved and with some rather tricky conditions as well. Everything that our drivers have got to deal with, it'll be on their minds throughout. And then once the race is concluded, we'll be bringing you those post-race podium interviews right after the race, that being at approximately 9 o'clock this evening. Now, of course, in the commentary box, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, and you'll be able to watch this broadcast tonight via 3 different media. You can watch it on the official Next Gen Racing Facebook page, alternatively the official Next Gen Racing YouTube page, or last but not least, on my Twitch channel at TX141 on Twitch, which you can see there, the link there. But otherwise, just look up Next Gen Racing on YouTube or Facebook to find the alternative media. Now we need to take a brief moment to say thank you and give a shout out to our sponsors, the SimGrid, the website which is dedicated to helping PC communities in particular organise sim racing leagues, whether it be on Assetto Corsa competition, alternatively iRacing, but our main focus here is Assetto Corsa competition, of course. Indeed, we've worked with the SimGrid to bring this series to you, and we have a number of their members as part of the stewarding team tonight who will be helping us out with the stewarding, the live timings, you name it, they're there to support us, and we're here to provide some fantastic action in collaboration with them. We've also got the Coach Dave Academy. They're our second main sponsor. Coach Dave Academy, if you look it up on Google, you'll find that it is a dedicated place for setups and all things Assetto Corsa competition related. If you're looking to improve and move closer and closer towards what it takes to be a pro sim racing driver, your first step would be to go to Coach Dave Academy, where you can learn the ins and outs and really start to develop your technique and understanding of the physics of not just the car but also the circuit you race at and the setup you need to become dominant. Now, last time out we were at Catalonia, and it's worth us taking a look at our championship standings. Of course, after only one race, it's going to be quite a given in terms of the order. Whoever finished up front would be the overall championship leader, except there's a little bit of a twist in the tale here. You'll see that in our top 10, particularly our number 1 man right now, is not Juez Field, but instead it is Chris Zuger. The reason for that is that last time out at Catalonia, whilst Field did cross the line as our race winner by a considerable margin, a 15-second penalty was applied to his final finishing position due to the contact he had with a back marker on lap 23, if we remember correctly, over the course of the race. And that 15-second penalty demoted him from the race win post-race to 3rd place. So Juez has got quite a bit on his mind tonight, and he'll be wanting to put last week behind him and look to get the maximum possible points haul he can. But of course we see that our top 4 being dominated by Porsches, and then we have Joshua Allen there in P5 who has retired from the series for the time being due to personal circumstances, so we will not be seeing him out on circuit tonight or in the foreseeable future, as I've come to understand. And there we can see down in P9 Brett Crewcamp, the Bentley driver there, a very strong Bentley driver, and we look forward to seeing what he's able to achieve tonight. Meanwhile, in our 11th to 20th positions, we can see all of our drivers there. For example, we've got Thomas Nowicki, the first of our Ferrari drivers there in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo in 15th place. Indeed, the Ferrari's doing relatively okay at Catalonia. And as we hop down to 21st to 30th, we can see they're further down the order. We've got the likes of Tim Williams in the McLaren 720 SGT3 having a difficult time last time at Catalonia. In the end, coming home in 28th place and hence 28th on the championship board right now. As we go even further down the order, you can see really here from P31 downwards, these are the drivers who were so heavily affected by the major incident that we didn't catch on camera, but there was a huge smash at turn 3 on the opening lap, and the majority of these drivers being the ones who fell victim to it. For example, there you've got Ben Walker in P39, the McLaren 720 GT3 driver, who's very happy. And given the fact that England have won the football tonight, as I've come to understand, 2-0 is the result. No spoilers there. Well, unfortunately, I have spoiled it for you. 2-0 to Germany, and Ben's going to be coming into the racing tonight full of beans as a result of that. He was telling me in the pre-race chat that I had with him that if Germany had won, he'd feel very down going into the race. But if England had won, then he'd be full of momentum going into tonight's racing. However, if we go even further down, if we go all the way to the bottom of the order, one driver in particular who's looking forward to tonight is our P51 driver, and that is Mia Svensson, the Ferrari driver who unfortunately had a disconnect literally on lap number 1 of the race last time out and wasn't actually able to take part in the race. And we've had a number of drivers report that they had technical issues with connecting to the server we're racing on, and we've tried to alleviate and fix all of those issues tonight, so hopefully we won't see any disconnects. But Mia, definitely the one looking to try and get as much as possible out tonight, subject to connectivity standing. But those are our championship standings, and now let's come on to the track. So we've gone from Spain to Zandvoort in North Holland in the Netherlands, and as you can see here, a very difficult circuit and a very different one from what we saw last time at Catalonia. Consisting of 16 corners, well 15 corners in fact, getting our numbers right, 15 corners overall. You can see that the circuit comprises of quite a twiddly sectors, in the fact that Sector 1 in particular, which takes you all the way up towards turns 6 and 7, is a very tight portion of the circuit, which really takes away the opportunity for overtaking other than lunges down into Turn 1, the Turn 1 hairpin. It's then the circuit starts to open up from Turn 7 onwards into Sectors 2 and 3, and particularly we'll see in Sectors 2 and 3 that there are a lot of wide open corners throughout the circuit where our drivers will be able to go for cheeky moves, albeit in the Audi S section, turns 12 and 13, we should expect a massive concertina effect for our drivers, and indeed everybody will want to get the best run out of 14 into 15 to charge onto that start-finish straight to get the best possible run to attack into Turn 1. Now, our rules for tonight, of course, we have a mandatory pit stop in the race, which will require a tyre change and fuel being taken on board, 1 litre minimum inside a 10-minute pit window. And that is something all of our drivers will have to adhere to, and as we know, the pit window opens up at the midpoint of the race. So pretty much when the race is at its halfway point or just before it, we'll find that we have 5 minutes to either side of the midway point for the pit window. And we'll be shortly coming on to our driver briefing, but in the meantime, let's go to the circuit and let's give you an idea of the conditions right now. And as we can see, it is raining. It is not sunny. We're not in sunny Spain. We are in some quite dreary Dutch countryside. And indeed, all of our drivers right now just getting themselves set for the driver's briefing in a couple of minutes' time. A good number of them will be popping in. We can see Tobias Linden here making his way all the way around the circuit right now. And indeed, some ferocious rainy conditions as he makes his way there out of turn 14, going into 15 to complete the lap. Now, normally in dry conditions, the majority of drivers would be going out of this final corner full throttle or going into it in full throttle, whereas now it's going to be the case that it's going to be more of a balancing act on the throttle. As you can see the McLaren there behind him, and I believe that is Walker. Yep, that is Ben Walker indeed, having a little bit of an off there, but was able to keep it together. And that's what's going to make this such an interesting race, in the fact that we do not have the conditions that our drivers would love to have here. It's a very tight circuit. You can see already as Walker makes his way out of 1 into 2 and 3. Watch how the circuit tightens up here so much, and in turn 4 in particular is such a tricky cambered banking left hand, and you can see how deep Walker has gone there because of the water. It's led to him understeering, and that is the thing. Our drivers will be having to search for a dry line here, and we expect a dry line will open up quite nicely over the course of the race, albeit if the rain continues with the intensity it is right now, that dry line is only going to be there temporarily, and we'll find that it will very quickly get covered up. We've got a track temperature here of 22 degrees centigrade, 19 degrees ambient as well, so we haven't got high temperatures around here, and that's going to mean that water, whilst it will dry over time, there's always going to be that concern about the fact of water building up on the circuit, and particularly if you have to go off the racing lines. We see Linden there moving out the way as Walker comes through here to start completing Sector 2. It's going to be one of those situations where it's going to be a very tricky track to master, and whoever can get used to the conditions here and get used to them fast could really break away from the field and dominate in qualifying as well. Now, are we expecting a repeat of what we saw last time in terms of the Porsche 911s dominating the race? I do not think so personally. I think Zandvoort is a very different circuit compared to Catalonia, and whilst the Porsche, I suspect, is still going to be strong here, we have quite a number of sections, particularly the run from the end of Sector 1, so coming out to Turn 4 all the way up to Turns 7 and 8, as we see there Lardia getting it very wrong and just putting a little bit of a dab on the grass there coming out of 3 and immediately being pushed to the wall as a result of it, as we've got Kilgren making his way right now through the Audi S here in the Aston Martin, coming out of 13 and heading down towards 14, the double right hand section of 14 and 15 to complete that. I do think we are going to see a mix of cars up the front. I do not think we're going to be seeing the Porsches take over control and take the front rows again. Instead, it could be the case that we may see perhaps a Ferrari, alternative an Aston Martin right up there, but we will wait and see. Of course, all the cars here do have a good shot, albeit the one car I think that may struggle a little bit here in the hands of a very capable driver, and that is Loisinger there. You can see him in the middle middle, your camera shot in the BMW M6, and personally done some driving in my own BMW M6 in ACC around the circuit the other day. Found that it was quite a difficult car to drive around here in the dry because of the fact you've got a lot of corners where you want to go full throttle, but you can't quite unless you've got the setup right. For that BMW, it's going to be lethal on the straights, and that's something which Loisinger is going to try and capitalise time and time again. But we will wait and see, as we're just about to listen in to the driver's briefing. We'll bring that to you very shortly. So any moment now, we're expecting the driver's briefing to get underway. We're listening, Kevin Smith will take over.
Good evening everyone, and welcome back to the Next Gen Racing for round 2 at Zandvoort. As you all know, it is a tight track and smaller than last week's race at Barcelona, so we got a few additional points just to run over in the driver's briefing before we ask if any of you's got any questions. So on qualifying, please keep the pace on your out laps. There's to be no queuing at all on the track like we had last week at the chicane before the start finish straight. Anyone found to be doing so will receive a qualifying ban straight away. There's no questions about that. During qualifying, if you are on an out lap coming out of the pits, please keep an eye on the relative and your mirrors running into turn 1. And if you do invalidate your lap, please move over for the drivers currently on hot laps. If you retire from the race at any point, please notify us on Discord to avoid any point penalties within the standings. And anyone that exits the server with a penalty outstanding will receive a qualifying ban for the following round. Exiting the pitch during the race, please obviously keep in mind, check the relative, keep an eye on your mirrors so you don't cause collision on pit exit, and please hold your brakes if you spin or you are in an instant. It is a wet track and we do expect it to be wet for the race, and when rejoining, please be predictable and join safely. Any bad rejoins will result in a stop go and instance on lap 1, as we had a bit of a disaster last week. All lap 1 instance will result in a drive through to the driver found at fault for that. And if anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat now so we can get them answered before we get qualifying underway.
So our first question is from Joaquin Kilgren, which is as follows. Please specify the blue flag rules.
Blue flag rules during qualifying move off the racing line to allow the guys on hot laps to go through clean and safely so they can continue their lap. And during the race, you have 2 laps to move off and allow the car to actually go past you, but there's to be no defending at all. So if the lead car makes a move to go past you, let them go. Just back off a bit early or brake a little bit earlier into a corner. If the lead car makes no move but is faster than you, you should still move off the racing line to allow them through. And if that's all the questions, good luck everyone, and we have 2 minutes until qualifying starts. Please keep in mind it is wet, drive safe and have fun.
So as we come back to the circuit, there only really one question today for our our lead head steward there of Kevin Smith, and that was with regards to the blue flags, as you heard there. And now everybody are getting set. A lot of positive messages going up and down the paddock. A lot of drivers knowing it's going to be very difficult conditions to master today, and everybody generally being quite nice to each other, wishing one another good luck. And whilst we do have a couple of minutes and everyone's parked in the pits, let's just take a quick look at the chat and say hello to you. I hope you're all doing well and you've had a good start to your week, whether it be Tuesday, and we're only one day away from heading into July. How about that, into the second half of the year? So without further ado, we can see there we've got Sweelurb in the Twitch chat who is racing tonight. That's Tobias Linden. If you are wondering who Sweelurb is, he is a participant. You can see him in the yellow Aston Martin Vantage V8 AMR there, but some of our drivers are making their way out on to the circuit. And we've also got Ingo Hormann here, the German driver, of course, in the Porsche 911. Good driver and had a solid performance last time out at Catalonia, looking to repeat that. We also say hello to Chris Wolf from the Facebook chat. He'll be in and out throughout the race, but he's wishing everybody good luck for tonight. And also Governor ITR, who is looking forward to the race. And indeed, we will be right back to get underway with qualifying. So qualifying is now underway, ladies and gentlemen. It is go, 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 15 minutes. Who is going to be on pole by the end of it? We will, of course, find out. Now, to respond to a particular comment from RSG Tugrigui 172, who we say hello to as well from the Twitch chat. Can we have the lap time on the leaderboard? Unfortunately, we have a technical limitation at the moment. We're still trying to get this fixed for future streams where we cannot see the overall time on that left-hand side leaderboard. But what we can do for you over the course of the qualifying session is we can bring up a timetable here, which you will see, and that gives us an indication of the different qualifying times set by the driver. So we will flick that up every so often. We won't keep it up too often, of course, because we don't want to obscure all the action that's happening on circuit, but that's a middle ground that we'll be able to achieve for you. As we say hello to Governor ITR, who is looking forward to the race, and 3 of the drivers from his team will be racing tonight. So that's great, of course, for Team ITR. We look forward to seeing what you guys are able to achieve on track. And we also say hello to Sobigrid from the Twitch chat, a wet race, wishing that iRacing had rain, and to Disco Duck 11, a good Horman. Well, good to have you here, Disco Duck. And without further ado then, we are going to have Atkinson take us around for a lap around the very tricky circuit. So riding on board here with the Bentley driver, making his way out of turn 15, going full attack down into turn 1 for the first time of asking. It's going to be our first flying lap. So to take you around then, coming into turn 1, it's going to be braking down through the gears right now into the hairpin corner. See there, just gradually bringing the car into the apex. They're going for that late apex off of turn 1 to get the best possible line, running up to 2 now, through to the left-hander. The right-hander 3 awaits here. A very tricky corner, avoiding the curbs, you notice, because they're very heavily raised. Coming into 4 now, very sensitive on the throttle through 4. He's going to wait, and then he's going to start to build that throttle on exit so as not to run too wide there and hit the grass. Now coming through 5, the right-hander into left-hander 6, full throttle here, giving it the full beans, and then up the hill across the sector line for turn number 7, and coming into 8 here, the deceiving downhill right-hander where the car gets carried away on the apex. You can see takes a tight early apex so he can let the car flow out before extending the throttle, and now coming in towards 9 and 10 into the right-hander he goes here, a quick trail brake in, of course, and now making his way up into the first of the 2 right-handers here. This is the proper turn 10, and as he goes into the corner, very tricky corner there because of the fact you've got a tight apex but a wide entry and exit, and now coming through turn number 11 here, very similar style corner, back to back effectively, and now making his way up towards the Audi S of turns 12 and 13, looking a very composed lap so far by Atkinson, and doing a very clean job indeed of bringing the car around on circuit. As he makes his way into 12, through the right-hander he goes, and then backwards into 13, left, so right into left there, but you can see he's got to be so sensitive on the throttle so as not to spin the wheels up. And now 2 corners away. It's been a very good lap, 14 and 15, taking a nice tight early line there through 14 and getting on the power, and he's going to absolutely attack it out of 15 here, try and keep the throttle as committed as possible. A light lift there just initially before coming out of the corner, and this is going to be our opening qualifying lap. And what's it going to be from Atkinson? It is going to be a 1:43.0. That is the first lap out on circuit, but Loisinger here making his way around around right now, and we can see just coming out of turn number 10 and up into 11, the BMW driver looking relatively good so far out on circuit, albeit we don't have a time put in by Loisinger as of yet. We will wait to see what he's able to achieve timing wise, but he's pushing around right now, making his way up towards the Audi S. Indeed, a lot of drivers, and we can already hear that Mathis Voss has been able to go faster than Atkinson with 42.6. He's crossed the line, but we're going to follow our BMW driver out the Audi S here. He's only got 2 more corners to go as we see the Porsche behind him there just going a little bit too deep into turn 13, going deep into the Audi S second portion, and now coming out of 14 up into 15, and this is where it can be so difficult to nail that throttle, particularly in the front engine rear wheel drive cars, because the front of the car wants to understeer by default, and in the rain it understeers even more. He comes across the line here, and what's it going to be from the BMW driver? It is going to be a P17 so far, a 145.0, but right now provisional pole going to Mathis Voss here, the Porsche driver from France, and indeed looking very strong once again, the ITR driver. One of the 3 ITR drivers we have here today, he looked strong at Catalonia, but things went a little bit south, but he's continued to push around. And as our drivers are making their way around the circuit right now, we can see that Voss really leading, and he's got a 3/10 advantage to the Porsche of Laudier. The Porsche is looking strong once again, in fact, so I think we do have a little repeat on the works with regards to our Porsche drivers here, and as they make their way around, we are hearing down in the paddock that it does seem to be the fact that a lot of people are reckoning the Porsche will be the stronger car of the cars available to our drivers here, but we do have the Ferrari pack now making their way out the order, and none more so than Mia Svensson. Now, Svensson had the chance to catch up with the American driver going into the race this evening, and what he was saying to me is that with regards to this race, he's expecting there to be carnage at turns 3 and 4 in the opening lap, and he'll try to make up places. He's expecting to have a poor qualifying session, Izmir, but we will wait and see there with regards to that qualifying session whether the driver will have that difficulty, as they're P7 right now, the 43.3. That's not far off a pole. Well, I say that's not far off a pole, and then Voss goes and shows us all up by setting a 41.8 there in that P1 position right now. But Svensson will be looking to achieve and make up places over the course of the opening laps, and hoping not to disconnect, although expecting to disconnect from the server once again come the end of lap 1. But fingers crossed technical issues do not kick in here as they make their way out of 4 and all the way in the run through 5 to 7 up to 8 right now. Around the circuit, we have got Velkovsky, the German driver here, Robert Velkovsky, making his way through the Audi S's right now in the Porsche, of course. In P20s, it currently stands on a 43.5, and having done a reasonable job so far in qualifying, looking to continue to push around to the best of his ability, as we can see that he's making his way out of the final 2 corners and heading up towards that timeline. Will this be an improvement from the driver? He's currently provisional P22 as he goes all the way out the corner, and well, in fact, he's jumping into the pit, so he feels as though he needs to put a new set on right now, a new set of rubber, perhaps just a fresh one, or change the setup of the car, perhaps feeling that the setup isn't quite right and he's still got half the session to go. Now we have got Jun, the German, not the German driver here, the Dutch driver in the German machine and the Mercedes AMG here, currently P10, provisional P10 on a 42.9, looking quite consistent is Jun, and he has been a consistent driver in that Mercedes. We commented on that last time at Catalonia. He did look quite strong overall, quite a good balance on the car there, and a very balanced driving style, the number 37 driver, as he makes his way to the timing line here. Will we see an improvement? He's currently on a 42.9, and as he comes across that timing line here, it's not an improvement so far. So right now, pole position is being held on to Mathis Voss, and the Frenchman, having set a 41.4, continued, my goodness me, continuing to improve with each and every lap. Is the number 222 driver here. And is it going to be a case that anybody can get close enough? Well, the closest driver on circuit right now is Kellgren, the Swedish driver, with a 42.2, just set on that lap which we've missed. But he's come out of turn 1 there, and really Kellgren the best of the rest right now, and only 400ths ahead of Laudier, who is in that P3. Now, of course, we'll take a quick look at our timetable right now to give you an idea of the laps from our different drivers, and we can see that Voss the fastest of anybody in all 3 sectors, really, and not being challenged too much by the other drivers right now. Seems to have found a very strong setup for the car around the circuit. As we look a little bit further down the order right now, and we can see, for example, that we do have Bartel in P25, the Bentley driver, the South African Bentley driver, having had a reasonable run at Catalonia. Not as strong here so far at Zandvoort, but it's a very different driving setup and a very different set of conditions here today, of course, in the Dutch circuit. So as a result, we would expect that some drivers will do better than others here, and indeed have a complete reversal of form. But again, it's all about mastering these tricky conditions. Bartle in provisional P28 right now with a 1:43.5 and looking to try and improve as we follow him to the end of his current lap, and he continuing to fall down the order as more qualifying times are coming in. As we say hello to Zoronic, and also just to respond to Governor IT on the Twitch chat, if you can find us the shortcut to show lap times next to drives, we'd be very grateful for that. But in the meantime, we will press on. Of course, we do love the ACC community and we love what all the different teams bring, and indeed any way we can improve the live stream broadcast for you over the course of this season, do let us know, folks. And if you know some workarounds, we'll be able to help and implement those in rapid order. As we see there, Yep moving out the way for a number of drives. Richard Yep in provisional P14 right now, making their way of course up into turn 10, and ample space there to let drivers through going into turn 10 because the way the circuit opens up out of 9, as we can see behind him. He's got Linden now gradually catching up to the back of him here, and Yep getting ready to go once again. Now, in terms of drivers getting into the 41s, we do see here that we've got another drive, or two more drivers in the 41s now, and provisional P2 has gone up to the Irishman of Ethan Faulkner in the Ferrari 488. Now, the thing about the Ferrari in particular, and this is something that's perhaps understated about the Ferrari, as we can see he moves out the way for traffic coming through with regards to the Audi S's. The Ferrari does not necessarily have strong straight line speed, but it has very good handling characteristics, and it means that it's a car that is all about mastering the maintenance of apex speed. So if you can keep your speed through the corners as best as possible of corner apexes, then the straight line speed deficit of the Ferrari, it will be felt but not as much, and that's where the Ferrari will work. It will suffer to a degree coming down out the final corner in towards turn number 1, for example, and the run from 4 all the way up to 8 because it's a full acceleration zone. But for a lot of these corners, particularly in sectors 2 and 3, the Ferrari is going to be quite strong. As we see here, Field now up onto a 41.6. He's taken provisional P2 for the time being, with just under 5 minutes of the qualifying session to go as all our drivers make their way around. And we can see that we've got the Audi just behind Field, and that is the Audi of, if we just take a look down our order here, and I believe that is Peelan actually following him around. Indeed, that is Peelan there, and I did have the chance to speak to the Dutch Audi driver, Lucas Peelan from Hermes Racing, before going into tonight, and what he was saying to me was that with regards to the race tonight, he's hoping for a top 20 finish in the Audi, but he expects it's going to be tricky to drive in the wet because the Audi is a good handling car, but the rear end can become quite unstable in these wet conditions, and as a result, that's the one thing he will need to master. And you'll notice he's quite sensitive to the curbs there going on into the Audi S, particularly into turn 12 because of the raised curve. That can send the car launching off the circuit, and that's the last thing you want to do is clatter the curb. But down in P32 right now is the Dutchman of 43.5, and I think he's going to be trying to recover places in the race or just run a consistent race. And as you heard in the driver's briefing, there was that massive collision at the start of the race at Catalunya as Peelan peels into the pits there, no pun intended, and we can see that we've got Moreira, the Portuguese driver in the Aston Martin from Team M2 competition, just making his way right now down towards the Audi S, coming out of 11 and looking very pointed in that Aston Martin, indeed very in control, but just hasn't quite got the pace on that 43.3, his best lap so far, indeed trying to find ways to improve. Now, it's very difficult to see whether a dry line is opening up right now. We can't really see a majorly clear driving line, but we are starting to see a small driving line, a dry line appear around the circuit. You can see, in fact, where you've got those slightly off-coloured parts of the circuit where all the drivers are sticking to a single line, and of course that is going to be the better line for our drivers to get the optimum time. But of course our drivers will need to be wary of the fact if they continue to run on that drier line of the circuit, that will cause the pressures of the wet tyres, indeed the temperatures, to come up. They need to keep those wet tyres cool until they go onto that fast qualifying lap, because if these wet tyres go above their recommended temperature and indeed go outside the operating window, that is going to compromise them, heavily wear on them, and as a result compromise the lap time. As we see there, Moreira going a little bit wide out of 3 and having to collect the car as he clips into the wall there at 4, and that's how easy it is to make a small mistake, but he collects it very nicely there and keeps it going all the same. No major damage to the car. Now we do have Ben Walker here, the McLaren 720 GT3 driver, making his way through at 2 and 3 right now. The British driver in provisional P4 and a 41.8, as we've only got 2 minutes to go, but he has got cars coming up behind him and he's having to give some space to the Porsche going through, and I believe that's Voss going through, Mathis Voss, as they make their way out of turn 4. And looking at that timetable quickly, we can see that Voss still dominating those qualifying times. The deficit between himself and the field has come down to 2.5 tenths, with Field now in that provisional P2 of a 41.6, but Voss really running away with the qualifying session still, Walker in P4. I think he'll be happy if he can get himself onto that second row, but he's only 300ths ahead of this man right here, the Swiss of Chris Zuger, doing everything he can in that Porsche 911 to get himself onto the second row, if not further up, as we've only got 1.5 minutes to go of this qualifying session right now, and of course all our drivers needing to be ever so cautious around the circuit. And as we look around, we can see down towards the bottom of the field, meanwhile we have got the likes of Jesse Monrose, the French driver here, making their way up into turn 1 in provisional P38 as it currently stands on a 44.3. Not having the easiest of times in qualifying, but do keep in mind we do have a huge number of drivers here. We have today approximately 40 drivers out on circuit, and that means in terms of qualifying, the qualifying times are going to be so tight. From Monrose all the way up to our pole sitter, it is 3 seconds the gap. If you compress effectively what is 38 cars into that 3-second window, you divide it up, you'll notice that those lap times are incredibly tight, and that is really how tight it is with regards to this league going into round number 2. And nobody, oh goodness me, and I see a Ferrari in the rear of your camera shot there. I think that was Hill getting it very wrong coming out of 4, and the car just snap oversteering. Was that Tony Hill? No, that wasn't Hill. That was another Ferrari. I'm not 100% sure who it was. It might have been Warren, in fact. Was that Brandon Warren? No, it definitely was not. So somebody getting it very wrong there and sending it into the wall on the inside coming out of 4 up into 5, and that's how easy it is to get it wrong, as we see Warren, the American driver here, making his way down into turn 8 right now, and we're looking up at those pole times, and we can see that Voss still holding on to the lead right now with only 20 seconds to go before our drivers are mandated to complete their laps, and we stay with Warren for the time being as all of our drivers make their way around the circuit. And we will keep that in mind for next time, Governor, with regards to holding caps and 0 on numpad and cycling through the modes. We'll definitely do that next time, and we thank you very much for that. We won't be able to do that right now, as we say hello to Alan Baldwin on the YouTube chat, and good evening to you, Alan, and indeed to Matt Emmons as well. Hope you're doing well, Matt, and it does look tricky indeed in these wet conditions, and I don't envy you or the drivers out here for the fact that they are really having to work it hard. But coming back to the here and now, what I can tell you, as Warren makes his way down towards turns 14 and 15, it is looking a reasonable lap from Warren so far as he makes his way out of 14. That's the long run through 15 to the timing line here, and you can see just going a little bit wide of the apex there. He wanted a slightly tighter line, just struggling to get the car to turn. He crosses the timing line here, and what's it going to be from the American? Is it an improvement? It is a 43.0. He moves up a position into a provisional P26, but meanwhile around the circuit, Voss right now coming out the final corner here. This is for potential pole position. He's on a 41.4 right now, and he's peeling into the pit. Indeed, we've got Field making his way around. He's coming out of turn number 10 up into 11 right now as the Porsche driver, and he's the closest one to potentially knocking Voss off a pole position. A 41.586 for Field last time out. He's doing one more lap. Of course, he's got some traffic ahead of him, and this could compromise his lap massively as he comes up into the braking zone for the Audi S's for the final time in this qualifying. And he gets it wrong, and he gets a snap oversteer just coming out of turn 12, and then he has to give way, and that is Field's chances of taking pole position over, as we see Walker parked up out on circuit. We've got Lardier making his way around right now, and indeed the Frenchman, he's the only one who could potentially really have a shot at challenging for pole on a 41.991 right now. It's half a second between himself and the top man of Voss as he makes his way through turn number 11 here. And you can see he drifted sideways, and that is the qualifying session complete, ladies and gentlemen. So Voss takes pole with a 41.4 there, a phenomenal lap, and almost 2 tenths clear the rest of the field. We will be right back to get you underway with the race as everybody is getting set. So as we wait for all of our drivers to get underway now, of course, it will be the case that it'll be Voss on pole, and alongside him will be Field. The two drivers are lining up once again. The two Porsche drivers having a very strong qualifying session. But if you want surprises, well, you've got Faulkner there, who's qualified in P3. A phenomenal effort there from the Ferrari driver, and really dispelling the idea that it was going to be a Porsche lockout all the way up the front 2 rows once again, getting his car into P3. We then got Walker in P4 in the McLaren 720S. We are seeing the mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars seemingly having a very strong time at the moment, particularly in qualifying. The number 13 driver there of Walker, he'll be looking to make up for lost ground in race number 1 in round number 2 tonight. And we say hello to Greg B on the YouTube chat as well. And meanwhile, we've got Zuga there lining up in P5. The Porsche driver will be joined by our first front-engine rear-wheel drive car, and that is Jeb in P6. We are seeing that those mid-engine rear-wheel drive cars just seeming to have the advantage in the handling dominated races, and indeed in these wet conditions being able to bring that rear around as rapidly as possible and avoid the understeer is going to be critical for their success. And we can see though Yet putting in a very good performance there, Richard Yet from Harwin Racing in P6. We've got Lardier in P7, and alongside him is Le and we saw last time Floic, the French driver, doing a very good job in the race and looking to do that once again. But he's going to have Harkonnen, Harry Conan, I should say, Kevin Harikonen from France alongside him from ITR, the Intruder Racing team, and he'll be looking to do everything he can, starting in that P9 position. Then we've got Joachim Kellgren, of course, the Swedish driver here in the Aston Martin, looking strong once again. And he's got Carl Brom, his fellow countryman, alongside him in P11. The two Aston Martins there looking to go toe-to-toe. And then we've got Horman down in P12. And we've got Leonidas Saridis, the Greek driver there in the Bentley P13. What can he do? Just out-qualifying Brett Krukam by a small margin. And he'll be looking to try and get himself ahead, Will Krukam, of Saridis, showing that he'll be the strongest of the Bentley drivers. As we say hello to a NXTGEN Ultra. Apologies there, folks. I think we just had a very brief cutout of the stream, and indeed I think we've had a slight disconnect from the server. We will be right back for you. Apologies for that, ladies and gentlemen. I think we just had a very slight technical issue. We are still getting it fixed. We will be right back. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Very sorry about that. We just seem to have some connectivity issues with the server. We're the one falling victim to the server tonight. But I can assure you we are now underway with everybody pulling off the line and getting ready to go. And really, right now, the pressure is on Voss, the P1 man, as we ride on board with him here. And the thing that'll be going through his mind right now with regards to the rolling start is he'll want to try and get these wet tyres on the warm-up parade lap as warm as possible. Get them in those optimal zones here. And also get a feel, because we've still had continued rain here. And the track temperature hasn't changed, nor has the ambient temperature, and he does have to worry about the fact that it is going to be a tricky one at these conditions. Meanwhile, behind him, of course, Field will be looking to do everything he can in order to disrupt what Voss is able to achieve. As we ride on board with the Swiss driver here, making his way right now behind Voss through turn number 5 into 6, and we can see just trying to get a little bit of temperature in, and you can see how tricky it is. He's having to fight the car to keep those tyres warmed up, and it is indeed very wet out there as we look a little bit further down the order right now, and we can can see everybody just snaking along right now, getting ready to go. As we've got Wilcox there down in P29. Jason Wilcox, the British driver here, not having the best of qualifying sessions. He's also in the Porsche and will be looking to see what he can achieve so far down the order. Indeed, can he get himself up into some fighting positions as we go into the races? We see there an Aston Martin getting it very wrong. I think that was Moreira. In fact, we have got an Aston Martin sideways coming out to turn 6 on the parade lap, and he's had to get the car reset, and he will do it very shortly, but he's going to have to get himself back up through the order, and indeed he might be starting out of position. Now, as we can see, we've got Kloridis, the Greek driver, as well here in the McLaren, the blue McLaren there, making his way right now through turn number 9 up in towards 10 as he just heads down towards 10 right now. Behind Mustakis, the Bentley driver ahead of him, the two drivers, Bill just ahead of him, of course, the Greek driver, the two Greek men trying to do everything they can there. As we see, we've got Moreira just trying to cut his way up through the order right now, and fortunate enough to be able to use the ghosting ability during the parade lap in order to jump up a few places. As we are now in Sector 3, we're heading into Sector 3, and that means everybody's going to have to start lining up very soon into the 2x2 formation to get underway. And as we look back towards the front, we can see we've got Svensson, the American driver, in P18, and indeed Svensson will be looking, having not disconnected so far, will be looking to have a good start to this race, as behind Atkinson, where he was strong at Catalonia in the Bentley, no doubt can he achieve something special today. But as we see now, we've got Voss at the front of the pack. He's ready to go, but he's waiting for everybody behind to line up, and we wait to get underway with the 75-minute race. And it's go, 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 lights out, and away we go for round number 2. The 75 minutes underway, and Voss immediately pulling to the centre of the circuit and essentially forcing Field to go as deep into the corner as possible on the outside there. Both drivers side by side through turn number 1 as they all make their way through the corner, and there's been a huge incident already, and we have got multiple cars. There's been a collision, and that looks to be Walker, who's had a disastrous start. There was contact there, and everybody having to dodge a car that's parked right in the middle of the circuit. That is a Porsche, and I think that's Zuger who got knocked sideways. We will take a look back at what happened there very shortly. In fact, we're going to do so now. So just give us a second to get the replay back, folks. It will take a brief moment. But absolute carnage once again at turn number 1 on the start of the lap. So they're making their way down towards turn number 1, and you can see Zuger here, he's on the inside, and then you've got Walker on the outside, and going through the corner, it was the case, he tapped Walker, but he was tapped on the inside himself a little bit as well, or was he? And then as the drivers all came through, they couldn't see the fact that Zuger had the spin out, and he's just parked there, and well, some drivers just on cold wet tyres careened into Moreira there, for example, going straight into him, and that is how it all kicked off, and that is really how turn number 1 has played out so far. We will bring you what's happening live on the circuit. As we see, Voss right now has made a breakaway, although he's got Field right behind him, but Faulkner capitalising on the carnage behind, and Lardier has moved all the way up to P4 already as they make their way down towards the LDS. Behind, we've got Harikonen here, and Harikonen, the Ferrari driver, will be very pleased with how things have started off for him as they make their way out of the final 2 corners to complete lap number 1. So after one lap, as we see Field there going a little bit wide, it is Voss leading the field with Field behind him in P2. Then the Swiss is being followed by Faulkner, who's in a battle with Lardier, although we can see Lardier not able to stay right in the slipstream right now, and I think trying to get some water on the tyres to cool them down. Harikonen in P5, Lefloic in P6 chasing after him, and then we've got Carlbom, the Swede, in P7, followed by Saridis in P8 right now. A little bit of a gap starting to open up from Carlbom to Saridis, so really you've got the top 7 breaking away from the rest of the field, and Saridis acting as a little bit of a cork in the bottle right now in the Bentley, trying to get those tyres in position as he makes his way through turn number 4, and then we've got Kriesma in P9, the Finnish driver chasing after the Bentley ahead of him, and then we've got Kellgren, of course, in the Aston Martin, much like Kriesma ahead of him, there in P10, and that is our top 10 rounded out. Crew Cam in P11 there, chasing after right now, and as we look a little bit further down the order, one driver who's already gained 4 places and actually finished the opening lap as well is Svensson, the American driver here, reveling it would seem in these opening conditions, in these tricky conditions, and up into P14 and chasing after P13, which is in the hands of Delcomin. As we see there is I think that is a Porsche circuit there. there at the rear of your camera shot, and I think that was Velkovsky. Yep, Velkovsky did go wide out of turn number 8 there. Well, it looked to be that he went wide out of turn number 8, and he has dropped a little bit down the order, has Velkovsky, or was it Gianpietro? Well, we can see Gianpietro right now in P19. Oh, that's P19 on our screen, but that does not look like P19. I think it's actually Gianpietro who made the mistake. The French driver got it wrong there and has dropped down to P23 as a result of that mistake. Or well, was it? But no, it was Velkovsky in the end. My apologies, folks. We were right the first time around. It was Velkovsky who did get it wrong, and as a result, now it's all the way down in P21. He was in P17 at the time he went wide out of turn number 8. But this is the battle right now for what is at the head of the pack. P18, we've got Miraglia just up the front of this pack, and well, in fact, that's not Miraglia, that is Mustakis. I'm getting everything wrong right now, but we can see Mustakis in P19, the Bentley driver here. He's got a Bentley behind him of Atkinson, and then he's got a pack of ferocious cars all trying to chase after him, but we can see Velkovsky under pressure right now from Yun, as Yun looks to the outside German versus Yun, and as they make their way into the corner here, you can see that the Dutchman of Yun just not able to find a way around, but he goes to the cutback here. A very nice move from Yun, and Yun up into P21. Just calls in Velkovsky to take that inside line where there was more water, and as a result, a greater potential to understeer across Apex, and that's exactly what's happened, as Velkovsky now needs to find his way back into the fight. But he has got Warren behind him, and indeed the American driver will now see that Velkovsky is quite vulnerable, it would seem, into turn 1, and he'll be looking to hug the back of that Ferrari around the circuit and try to get the launch down into the turn 1 hairpin. We can see a little bit further back, meanwhile, you've got Hill just chasing after these guys. Will fact that Hill is here right now, making his way through turn 7 and into 8, and he'll be looking to get into the fight very shortly. But meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Field has now made his way up into the race lead, and in fact, Voss is all the way down in what looks to be right now P3. So I think Voss has had a mistake somewhere. We didn't quite see it on camera, but Voss has made a mistake. He's dropped down to P3. Well, no, he's dropped down to P2 because that in front of him is Zuga, and Zuga is, well, I think he's a lap down Zuga in the fact that he picked up that damage on lap number 1, Chris Zuga, and he's all the way down in P40. So that's why we've got a car between Voss and Field, and it is Zuga who is a lap down and now being caught up by the lead lap pack, as we notice that Faulkner here trying to catch up to our P2 man and trying to put some pressure on in that Ferrari, as we see the rear end there of the Irishman just sliding a little bit through turn 15, and you can see that rotation we were talking about with the Ferrari. It loves to rotate through the corners, but it can make it quite a tricky car. But we noticed that Faulkner really trying to capitalise on Voss seemingly having made a mistake on lap number 2. So lap number 3, I should say, as they all make their way onto lap number 4 once again. Now behind we can see Lafloic under a little bit of pressure from Carbon right now, and Carbon looking to get in a position to attack the Dutchman is the Swede as they make their way into turn 4. And this is the thing with the opening sector, minus turn 1, it's very tight, it's very hard to go for a move, but then as we can see the blue flags, they're being waved for Zuga as they make their way down the hill here, and you can see Zuga letting one driver through but not able to find the space to let multiple through. And of course, oh goodness me, and it is that Faulkner into the wall. That is Faulkner into the wall there, Ethan Faulkner into the wall at turn number 7 and having to wait to rejoin, and that is very unfortunate for the Irishman. He's got a lot of cars coming through right now as he has tried to rejoin to the best of his ability, and I think that's Svensson trying to find his way through as they make their way out of the corner, and indeed it is Svensson, so that gives you an idea. Faulkner has dropped all the way down, and he's continued to drop as Bartel makes a move on Faulkner on the inside here, so the South African through up into P14, but Faulkner's going to come back at him immediately. I think not quite. He looks to put his nose in on the inside of turn number 10, but not able to get in there. These wet conditions really spelling difficulty for our drivers as they're making their way around, and a number of drivers up the front right now have succumbed to the wet and indeed sliding off of the corner, sliding off corners and heading into the wall, but rejoining as safely as they can. We have seen a couple fall victim to the circuit. Who else will fall victim in the near future? We will wait and find out, but right now Kuzma doing everything he needs to hold on to P8, the Finnish driver, making his way through turn number 14 very comfortably, and then going up into 15, but you could see just a little bit of snap oversteer there coming out of turn 14. That Aston Martin starting to come alive and looking a bit more agile, but of course a bit difficult as we see Zuga jumping into the pits, and we've got a battle, I believe, for P4 occurring, and it's Lafloic on the inside, Carbon on the outside, and as they make their way through the corner here, Lafloic defending very well, and Carbon cannot find a way to go all the way around the outside. Lafloic gives him the space, but then you can see that Carbon retreating back into the P5 position, recognising there's no way on for turn 3, not round the outside, even though he'd have the inside for 2. But as they make their way then out of turn number 4 and up the hill now they go, in the long run up towards turn number 8. You can see that Harikonen, by comparison, just staying right there, staying in that fighting position and looking to capitalise in short order, no doubt. He'll be waiting to strike, and he'll wait for them, as I think we just saw somebody get it very wrong there coming out of the corner, and I think that was Saridis in the Bentley completely missing the corner and dropping all the way down the order is the Greek driver there. So that is a disaster for Saridis, and he's dropped down to what looks to be approximately P15 out on circuit. Well, I'm not 100% certain on that. No, it's not quite P15, it's P13, with the fact that you have got Delcom there, and also I think Svensson is just dropped down the order a little bit. So Svensson has had a slight off somewhere. Everybody is having some difficulty here, and further back you can see Faulkner now in a battle there with Jep and Gianpetro as they make their way through at turn number 11. The Ferrari driver here muscled in between a Porsche and a Mercedes, the Italian stallion of the machine, sandwiched by the two German vehicles, and as they make their way up towards the Audi S here, you do have to imagine that Faulkner is trying to do damage recovery right now because he knows he can be right up the front. He saw that in qualifying, but he's now caught in the pack of drivers who might be a little bit slower lap on lap, but of course they'll be running consistent races, and race conditions are very different typically from qualifying conditions, and we can see where the rain continues to come down, and it's relentless that all of our drivers are having a difficult time out there, as we see that Field right now under a little bit of a situation here, having to pass the back marker there, but they made it easy. I think that's Ingonen as they make their way out of turn number 1. Indeed, that is Ingo Horman making his way along down in P38, and the German having a disastrous time so far. And indeed, we still have 39 drivers out on circuit. We have had one driver retire, although I'm not 100% sure who that is, but we do have 39 drivers out there right now. And crew camp in P8, as we see there, we have got, I think that is Carl Baum, who's just gone off. Indeed, he has. He went off at turn number 3 there, and the Swede, who was doing so well to get it up into P5, has now dropped all the way down to P10. It is a disaster for Carl Baum as he makes his way now through turns 5, 6, 7 and up into 8, and indeed he'll be looking to fight back as soon as possible. But a lot of our top runners just seemingly pushing the limits right now and not able to keep it fully controlled. As we see that we've got the Ferrari, and I think that's Tardioli, who we haven't talked about too much, the Frenchman there, Nicolas Tardioli from Valkyrie Esport, going a bit deep into turn 8, and that's made him very vulnerable through 9 and into 10, and already Carl Baum getting the place back and moving up into P9. A very nice move there by Carl Baum to see the pressure, and we see Saridis behind really struggling for grip through turn 10, and as a result Delcomin has made his way up into P number 11. The Frenchman continuing to push up the circuit, or sorry, the Belgian. My goodness me, the Belgian making his way up the order right now, and now chasing after Tardioli. That is the next place up for grabs, although I think there he's just gone a little bit deep and understeered under braking, but you can see he's got it back together through the second part of the Audi S, as that is Ross Bartel, and Ross Bartel has been sent to the wall out of the Audi S's there, and I think there might have been a little bit of contact, but Bartel are not having a good time through the corners right now, and it is really all kicking off all around the circuit, as we can see that everybody is finding just these little pockets of grip where they're able to excel, but they overextend themselves in these wet conditions, and that is what's cost them the ability to keep it safe. As we see there, I think that was Atkinson making a mistake there coming out the corner and almost losing it coming out of turn 15 by running wide onto the grass, but keeping it together for the time being. That everybody really pushing hard right now, and you do have to wonder whether it's the case that they're just pushing the limits too much, as we have still got the best part of over an hour of this race to go, but already in the opening 11 minutes we have seen the best part of at least 15 different offs, some of them, at least 5 of them, being major offs that are completely compromised the driver's race, and the other 10 being serious offs as well. As now we note that we have Tony Hill down in P23, but he's gained places through the fact he's simply been able to run consistently, has Hill, and he's continuing to push around on the circuit right now. As we look a little bit further down the order, and we can see that we have got Miraglia. Sorry, not Miraglia, we have got Peelan right now all the way down in P35. The Audi driver here just not having the easiest of times right now, chasing after Monroe's ahead of him and looking to try and find a way past it. It's Peelan, he's up to P34 with everything that's happening, but chasing after Monroe's in front of him, and Monroe's is not going to make it easy. They don't have to give one another places here, they are battling for position. I think you have to appreciate with regards to Peelan here, having picked the Audi is going to be a tricky car, and he did mention that to me down in the paddock before we got underway today. It was going to be a hard one, but still pressing on all the same and making his way out to turn 4 right now. But meanwhile up front, I can tell you that Field is leading the pack right now as he makes his way to conclude lap number 7, and he's got Voss only 2.5 seconds behind. You can see Voss there slightly behind Field, and behind them they've got Herman, who is behind in the previous lap. He's a lap down effectively, but Voss chasing after Field right now, and then you've got Lardier, who's up into P3 GT3 after everything that has played out, and it is 3 Porsches leading right now, and then you've got Harikonen in the Ferrari in P4, and he's only the best part of approximately 2 seconds off of Lardier as they make their way through another lap of the circuit. As they continue to push on, you can see that Kjellgren, meanwhile, down in P6, the Swedish driver here, he has got Kwiesma ahead of him. Now, remember that these two didn't start this far up the order. They started around the P10 area, but because of their consistent driving, they've been able to gain the positions, and that's what I think they're both going for. They're both not trying to push each other too hard, and you can see the same is going on, really, with Krewkamp versus Lefloic, in the fact that neither driver is overdoing it. Instead, they're focusing on clean lines and just keeping the car together, because the track conditions haven't changed too much. We can see that we do have that racing line forming in the wet, and some drivers are having to pull off of it on the straights in order to cool the tyres down. But it is the case that right now, with the amount of rain we've got, and we are expecting over the next 30 minutes to have heavy rain. So we're going to have heavy rain for at least the opening half of this race. These conditions are not going to get any better, and our drivers need to continue to maintain that focus on consistency, and the pace will come with time, and that will be on their minds as they continue to make their way around the circuit right now. And we look a little bit further down the order, and we can see Saridis in P12, the Greek driver here. He does have Yep chasing after him, and as we ride on board with Yep, you can see that it's very difficult for the Mercedes driver to see out the front of the car as he makes his way through the Audi S's here for the 8th time of asking, coming through that left-hander, and you can just imagine how difficult it is right now for him to get the throttle down. That V8 engine wanting to absolutely fly, but he's got to tame the beast within and charge out at turn 14, and we can see just ahead of him the fact that you've got Saridis also on the line, although Saridis going a little bit deep, but you can see just in that dirty air and overextended on the throttle pedal that Yep almost losing it there coming out of turn 15, but able to keep it under control. Good reactions there from Richard Yep as he makes his way down into turn 1, and this is where it is. You've got to find those lines where you can push to the maximum of your ability but not overextend it. It's those little things that make the difference, and you go one step too far and you're going to be off the circuit, and we have seen that so many times from so many different drivers so far. And to give you an idea, one driver who fell victim to it very early on was Ben Walker. Indeed, he had the instant on turn 1, if I remember correctly, and the British driver who was all the way up in P4 at the start of the race, now down in P22 and trying to catch up and cut through the field as quickly as possible. He is doing a good recovery drive right now, is Walker, and we're going to very quickly check in with our stewards right now, and we do have a large number of incidents that have been reported, and that is with regards to some of the aggressive driving in turn 1, and we are waiting to see whether anything has been applied right now. There's a stop and go 10-second penalty to car 25 for aggressive driving into turn 1, and car number 25 being, well, that is Chris Zuger, who is all the way down in P38, the Swiss driver, of course, being involved in that incident on the opening lap with Walker, and that's what kicked off the concertina effect through turn 1, but those two drivers are able to sort it out in the end with the heart of the stewards in play. As we see that field right now, our Swiss leader is still leading by the best part of, we would say, about 3 seconds as it currently stands. In fact, that gap is coming down a little bit on the last couple of laps. We note that the previous lap was a 43.4 from our race leader, a 43.1 for Voss. Voss here, you look at him in right now, the ITR driver, doing everything he can to close down that lead to field after making a mistake earlier on, the number 222 driver, and we know how fast Voss is. He doesn't need to prove that to anyone, but it's just the fact that so far in the race number 1, it was a mistake that occurred, and indeed an incident which cost Voss the ability to be able to race for the win, but today he won't want to let that escape. He will want to pick up the win here, at least be on the podium, but I suspect the win, as we see that we have got some drivers starting to head into the pits, and that's Lefloic who is into the pits, as is Faulkner here, and they are making their way, and this is not a scheduled stop, so I suspect this is most likely for a penalty or to do some repair work to the car. This is not the mandatory pit stop, as we still have the best part of 58 minutes to go. Expect our pit window to open probably within the next 25 minutes or so. But meanwhile, Carl Baum, who we're looking at here, the Swede in P10, just being chased by Yep as he makes his way into turn number 8 once again, and you can see, having had that instant earlier on where he made that mistake which dropped him down the order and dropped him out of P6, he's now starting to rein it in a little bit and keep his cool, and that's all important, of course, as he makes his way through turn number 10, and you can see just nailing the car there and looking very planted is Carl Baum right now, as we take a look in with our stewards once again. And it is there was a drive-through for car 58, and that was for the instant on the opening lap, and car number 58, to give you an idea as we're looking at through our list right now. was Loisinger, so that was the BMW driver, and that was an incident between themselves and car 86 on lap 1. And we are continuing to receive those stewards' reports as we go, but we can see right now, focusing more on the action on the screen rather than what's happening in our ear, we can see that Bartel in P23 right now has had a difficult opening to the race, but we can see, in fact, in P22, as some drivers dropping down the order and chasing after Moreira here, and you can see how Moreira going a little bit deep into the LDS there, but not making too much of a mistake, keeping it together in the Aston Martin. It's actually quite unique to see how the Aston Martin driver has a very different line for the LDS and able to maintain the momentum, but you can imagine that Bartel would love to have a move here down into turn 1, and we're going to stay with these two as they make their way out the final corner. Bartel having the much tighter line there through turn number 15 by comparison. Will the Grumpy Monkey machine be able to find a way past them? Will the Aston Martin be able to hold on? You can see there Moreira holding to the middle at first, but then switching back to the racing line. He's allowed the one move, of course, breaking down into turn number 1, and the Aston Martin just having the legs on the Bentley, but going a bit deep out of turn 1. There's not going to be a move for Bartel, but you could see there Moreira getting it very deep, and Bartel up a position, up into P21 through just some clean driving, and Moreira just making a small mistake. And now the next person up to take on Moreira will be Linden, of course, in P23, the Swede, making his way out to turn 4 right now, the number 100 car driver there, as behind him he has got Wilcox, albeit Wilcox is about 4 seconds behind. Indeed, the British driver from Metallica Racing will be looking to do everything he can to get into the top 20 come the end of this evening. But meanwhile, up front, I can tell you that Field is still matching Voss as best he possibly can. Last lap, the two of them were inseparable. They were literally only 3 thousandths different from one another. Field being 3 thousandths faster than Voss. And that's how tight it is between our two top drivers here. They're really opening up a gap to the rest of the field. Although you can see that Lardier is about 5 seconds down on Voss right now and is chasing after and matching our race leaders for pace, it should be pointed out, Julian. He is doing a fantastic job, the Frenchman, in matching them. He won't be if he goes onto the grass like that and does that again as the car gets destabilised into turn 1 under braking, and he was fortunate to catch that there. Lardier reacting to that immediately, but just starting to push the limits a little bit, I suspect, the Porsche driver here, and as a result Harikonen will be looking for that, and indeed the Frenchman will be trying to find a way to take on Lardier later on in the race with 55 minutes to go, and it's going to be so critical for Harikonen to find a way to close up to Lardier, because at the moment he's not able to put that pressure on that he would love to put on, and I think Lardier knows that, and as a result is able to make those little mistakes and not worry as much. But you can imagine if Harikonen was a second closer, if he was only there about 8 tenths down, that's where it'd be the case that Harikonen could really start to put that pressure on. Now, meanwhile, we've got Svensson in P11, and we can see Svensson having made his way up the order quite a bit. Indeed, the American driver here just keeping it nice and clean, and I can tell you that as a result, the number 3 car here having a good day at the races so far, but he's got a long way to go, and indeed he does have a number of drivers who would love to take that position off of him, none more so than Atkinson, as we see Atkinson making his way through turn 8 here, but he does have a back market to pass first as he makes his way through the, well, I don't think that's a back market. In fact, that is, as we take a look back, that is Del Comet, and Del Comet last time out was in P8, but he's dropped a little bit down the order there, and we can see as a result of that he has lost a number of places, and now the Belgian driver down in P11 where he's had a mistake somewhere on off or some contact has occurred, because that is not where he wants to be, and indeed now he is looking quite vulnerable as Svensson is up into P10 and he's pushing on his Romain Delcom as they make their way through turn number 12 and 13, and it's going to be the case for the Belgian that, having had the mistake which was off camera, needing to keep it together, as we see Yep by comparison now starting to be wheeled in by Svensson. Indeed, Richard Yep, the British driver here, under a lot of pressure, the Harwin Racing driver, as we look backwards from his car here, and you can see how Svensson able to take that tighter line through the final corner, but watch now as we get onto the straight how the Ferrari just seems to be dropped by comparison. The gap starts to open up as the Mercedes AMG power gets deployed, and the Ferrari 488 just cannot match it, but then under braking and through the apex of the corners, that's where we'll see that Svensson is able to close up, and that is the difference of the two cars with the balance of performance, the 2019 balance of performance. You can see that Ferrari just not able to maintain as much speed down the straight, but as soon as we get to the corners, particularly those medium to low speed apexes, the Ferrari just rotates through them so more comfortably, particularly through turn 4 here, and you can see how Svensson's trying to get on the throttle much sooner than Yep in order to close up and stay in that tow, but now we've got a long acceleration zone all the way up towards turn 8, and this is where that Mercedes is able to pull away briefly before we come into a sweeping right-hander. That is turn 8, of course, when we head into a high speed to medium speed apex, and as a result of that, that's where Svensson can start to close that gap up. But these two, I suspect, will be coming to blows soon in terms of battling on circuit, albeit Svensson's got to find a way to attack that's not coming out of turn 15 into 1, because that Mercedes will just run away with it. Meanwhile, down in P20, we can see that we have Latsos right now, the Bentley driver here, the Greek driver in P20. Haven't had a very quiet start to race. We haven't seen too much Latsos, but definitely having a better fare of fortunes today compared to last time out, and pushing around the circuit right now and doing everything he can to hold on to that top 20 position. As we see, we've got a drive-through penalty here for Loisinger, and I believe that drive-through penalty, if I'm not wrong, is with regards to... It is a bit of contact, I believe, or it might be track limits as well. No, it is contact. It's contact between himself and car 78 on lap number 4, and it is a drive-through penalty as a result for Loisinger. The Swiss driver not having a good day at the office in P26 right now. He's got a bit of a gap to other drivers around, but that is going to definitely drop him down the order later on. As we see Leclerc, meanwhile, Eric de Klerk, I should say, not Leclerc, the Audi driver here, the Dutchman, making his way out of turn 8 and chasing after Podium right now. The two Audis pretty much running around on circuit together, although we do also have the Audi of Mills a little bit further back in P33. Oh, goodness me, and that is Podium getting it very wrong coming out of turn number 9 up into 10, and as a result, the Dutchman now having to recover the car here on the apex of the corner as well, but everybody giving him room and respect to the fact he's stuck as he spins again as well, and we can see our race leaders now starting to come through, and this is not a day to remember for Podium right now. As we see, meanwhile, up front, Field, Voss and Ladier are continuing to make their way around the circuit very comfortably as we check in with you guys down in the chat. And we see there we have got Governor ITR wishing on Mathis as much as possible, wishing on Voss, of course, one of Governor's drivers, in the Twitch chat, as we say hello to Kitolu, who's supporting Team Valkyrie, and from Emma Sumner in the YouTube chat. Is there a sign out in the league not on track or no? Indeed, we are expecting every week approximately 50 drivers, but drivers are allowed to sign out of particular races, and a number of drivers had to today, so that's why we do not have the full field of 50, but we have the 39 cars instead. But we can expect that as the season goes on, we will still see plenty of drivers out there. As we're talking about seeing drivers, we see Williams, Tim Williams from Team Sausage Dodgers there, a rather brilliant team name if I say so myself. The Brit there just getting out of the way of our race leaders in the McLaren 720 down in P31 and trying to keep it together and just making his way around on the circuit down towards turn number 1 and making his way onto lap number 14. Now, what I can tell you in the battle for lead is that Voss is starting to close that gap up just a tiny bit. That gap has now come down to approximately 1.6 seconds as they make their way through at turn number 5 and into 6 they go. And it does expect and contract, but what the general theme is that Voss is starting to just put a little bit of pressure on Field right now. And to give you an idea, on that last lap, a 43.5 for this man who we're looking at. Meanwhile, for Voss chasing him, it was a 43.3. And as a result, Voss is now starting, I think, just to exercise a bit more control over the race pace here. And of course, Field could be massaging the tyres right now, or just simply looking after the car. But as they're coming up towards traffic as well, this is a good opportunity for Field to try and catch up to the back. Sorry, for Voss to try and catch up to the back of Field. And as a result of that, he can perhaps exploit that proximity and therefore be allowed through by a backmarker who's had to pull off the race line. As we see, we've got the Audis in front of him right now, and I believe that is the Audi. That was the second of the two Audis, as we note that Voss being held up a little bit here through the Audi S's. It's just naturally where he's caught the traffic, and this is going to spell a little bit of issue, and it will just cause the gap to open back up again as the Audi does move out of the way where it's possible to do so. But both drivers are making their way around very cautiously, still tiptoeing around the circuit, and we can definitely see in the case of Voss, it is one of those situations where he'd love to be closer to Field, but that track position is so important as Field has to carve his way through the back markers here. And we can see in the rundown towards turn number 1 right now that we have got Field asking for a Ferrari to move out the way, and they do so, and then Voss will have to do the same. As Lardier at the back of your camera shot, now the best part of approximately 6 seconds down on our race leaders, the Frenchman. He's got Harikonen getting closer and closer, and that's the Ferrari of Harikonen, the French driver here chasing after our P3 man from P4, and look how close that gap has come. And we said it was going to happen, it was going to get closer only a couple of laps ago, and I think Harikonen doing what Voss is trying to do to Field, which is to apply that pressure. On that last lap in particular, Harikonen, a 43.0, the fastest lap we have seen from anybody so far in this race. Meanwhile, by comparison, Ladier, it was a 43.641, and that is the difference. Harikonen is now going to town and chasing after that Porsche, which will open up the gap, of course, on the straights or any major acceleration zones. But as soon as we come to those corners, that's where Harikonen really does seem to have found some momentum, and he is deploying it admirably admirably here as they make their way through 9 once again, and as they go through the right hand, they'll be coming up towards turn 10 very shortly, and this is where Harikonen will look to maximise the gains as much as possible through these extended corners here where you've got those apexes which are so tricky to maintain the speed through, but Harikonen definitely seems to be the master of the apexes here versus the Porsche in front of him. Now Crew Camp by comparison, EMP7 right now in a little bit of a no man's land. He's got Kjellgren a bit up the road from him. He's got Carbomb chasing after him. But to give you an idea, Carbomb, who you just see very briefly at the very tip where Pontus Carbomb, who's overtaking traffic right now, albeit he will be shortly. He's got Yep behind him as well. Carbomb is the best part of 3 seconds down on Crew Camp at least as he makes his way. And I think that is Yep getting it a little bit wrong coming out of turn number 11. And the British driver there, Richard, getting it wrong to the point that he will not be able to maintain that pressure on Carbomb for the time being. So the Swede being given an opportunity, and the Mercedes just understeering off apex there a little bit, as behind you can see Svensson now going to capitalise on that, but wary of the fact that he has got Atkinson and Mustakis chasing after. You can see Atkinson, the orange Bentley there by comparison, making his way out of turn at number 13 and into 14 right now. The OTL racing driver here doing a very good job of just maintaining that pressure on the runners at the bottom end of the top 10, and perhaps there will be a top 10 finish in the bag for Atkinson if he can just eke that pressure on a little bit later, or he works something out in the strategy. You've then got Mustakis down in the P12 right now, and that gap between himself and Atkinson, the best part of 4 seconds, as we hear there is a drive-through penalty for Svensson. Now what has happened here? Svensson gets a spin, the American driver there at turn 1, so literally it's a double blow for Svensson, and we'll find out for you very shortly what has happened. But Svensson, that is a disaster there for the number 3 driver, and that is an incident involving cars number 3 and number 19 on lap 6, where there's a drive-through for car 3 for avoidable contact. So it is felt that Svensson caused an incident earlier on in the race, and that is what the drive-through penalty is for. And with that mistake as well, Svensson down into P17. Well, Svensson literally on a roll, and now having to do it all again after a drive-through penalty. Well, I think Svensson is going to be kicking it and screaming about that one for a little bit inside the cockpit, but will then cool down, of course, and get back to work. It's always the way with a driver: when you get a penalty and then you make a mistake on top of it, it's the last thing you want to have happen. But then what separates the good from the professionals is the idea that they're able to get their head back down and get underway. And from what I'm hearing down the paddock, the ITR drivers are very strong drivers with a good mentality, and Svensson will definitely be one of those many looking to come charging back and get as many places back as possible as we look further around right now. And as they make their way down towards turn number 1, we can see that behind, Voss putting as much pressure as he possibly can on, and as they make their way out of the corner here, it is the case that Voss really just not able to find a way, an exact science of being able to close up the field as rapidly as he would like. Although I should say that on that previous lap, we have now had a new fastest lap set by Voss, and that was a 42.966, but it's because of the traffic that these two have had and the way it's fallen to Voss, unfortunately, by comparison with field, that Voss able to gain the best part of 3 tenths on that previous lap, or 5 tenths actually on that previous lap, but field has got a nice gap because the traffic just has not worked out, as we see the Ferrari at the rear of your camera shot a lap down, getting it very wrong coming through turn number 7 there. As they make their way in towards turn number 9 once again, it is the case that Voss right now will do everything in order to try and get to field. But meanwhile, Luddier, a good gap back, but Harikonen not able to capitalise, and as a result, Harikonen now trying to chase after. It goes a little bit wide out of turn 9, and that was very on the limit of what he was willing to push there, was Harikonen, as it could have gone very, very wrong and seen him drop down the order. Albeit there is a sizable gap between our P4 man and our P5 man of Kjellgren here, as he makes his way through turn at number 11, past a lot of traffic here. Indeed, the traffic tripping overhead, as we see behind them that we do have the BMW and Audi there chasing after one another and making their way through the corner. And to give you an idea, all the way down in P35 right now, we will not P35, sorry, in P34, we do have Faulkner, the Irishman here, and we see we've got a Porsche there, and I think, is that Delcom getting it very wrong once again? Delcom in as they make their way out of turn number 8, where he's been able to get the car recovered, and Faulkner here really having to try and find a way into this, as we see who is that who's made the mistake. Well, that's not Gianpetro, as well we do see that we've got Faulkner behind. I think that is Delcom who's Delcom in, as we see the Belgian driver getting it very wrong once again, and it's all going from good to bad to disastrous for the Belgian, now down to P18, and he's going to have some cars coming behind him, but fortunately he's been able to get the car recovered for Valkyrie Esport coming out of turn number 11 here. But you can see that is Yun trying to find a way past, and Yun up into P18 as a result. The Dutchman now making his way a little bit further up the order, as we've got a 10-second penalty for Walker, who's made it all the way up into P13, no doubt, but he has got a 10-second penalty here as the British driver, and that 10-second penalty, to give you an idea, idea is for what was avoidable contact between himself and car number 233 on lap number 8. So as a result, he's getting a 10-second penalty applied to his race time at the end of the race, and Walker, I think, will have to just shrug his shoulders on that one and go, okay, it is what it is. I've now got to try and push even further to get myself up towards that top 10. But continue, as we see there's a car in the apex there of turn number 4, and that's the BMW, and there's contact between the BMW and also the Audi there, and we can see that both off the circuit, and we're not able to get you a quick view on that, but that was Loisinger and also the Audi there of what looked to be a click. Indeed, and he is just parked up against the wall trying to get the car recovered as the pit window has now opened, ladies and gentlemen. So I suspect we're going to see a lot of drivers jump into the pit, but it is all kicking off, and that Audi is going nowhere as we look further up our order right now, and we can see that Field still holding on to that lead by the best part of about 1.8 seconds as they make their way across the timeline. The pit window is open. Can we expect an undercut from either one of our drivers here? No, it is not the case, but you can see the Bentley in the rear of your picture there is definitely going into the pit. Meanwhile, Lardier and Hirikonen, will we expect anything from either of them? No, they're both staying out. So I think it is the case right now that our top 4 all wanting to push that race distance. And then down in P5 we've got Kjellgren, who has got Krizma catching up to the Swede. Well, these two have been inseparable pretty much the entirety of the race, albeit Kjellgren has made the pass on Krizma. It should be pointed out because it was Krizma ahead of the pair of the two of them earlier on, but now it is the case that Krizma is up into down to P6 and Kjellgren up into P5, and they've got Carl Bomber just behind in P7 right now. And indeed, he is the best part of what is about 4.5 seconds back on them as we see they make their way out to turn number 7 and up towards 8 and having a good time of things right now. Meanwhile, Yep would love to try and pick that position off in P8. He stands. He'd love to get into that P7 a little bit later on. As we can see, we do have Tardioli coming into the pits from what was at the time P13. He has come in and now will be taking his mandated pit stop, so getting that out of the way early and looking to undercut the drivers around him as Atkinson up into P9 and continuing to push on, although he's got Krewkamp and Mustakis behind him. And indeed, Krewkamp right now, the South African driver, will be looking to do everything he can in order to try and hunt down Atkinson and prove he is the fastest of the Bentley drivers. And we saw this last time out, albeit it was Bartel at the head of the pack last time out from what we recall at Catalonia, but this time it's Krewkamp leading the pair of them around. And indeed, it'll be the case that Krewkamp will be looking to attack Atkinson later on in the race and be the fastest Bentley out on the circuit here at the Dutch circuit at Zandvoort. We're almost halfway into the race. In fact, we are pretty much at that halfway point, -2 and a bit minutes, but what we can see right now, it has been a very tricky race, and I can tell you weather condition wise that we have had the ambient temperature drop by 1 degree centigrade. It's 18 degrees centigrade, but the track temperature is still 22 degrees centigrade, and that rain is not going anywhere. I think we've got heavy rain all the way to the end of the race, so this one is going to be very spicy. As I hear going into the pit is Voss. Looking at my commentary box window, I can definitely tell you that Voss has come in and is looking to pit and undercut potentially, as Kjellgren also into the pit from what was at the time P5, but now down into P6 of course, with Krizma going long here, and Krizma will have the big question of whether he's able to jump Kjellgren by overcutting or just taking a long stint compared to Kjellgren. We will wait and find out of course, but the big question will be on Voss, who is in the pits right now. Where will he come out? Will he come out in clear traffic as he makes his way around onto the circuit? But Hirikonen right now up into P2, staying out there. And in fact, what has happened to Lardier here? He's dropped down the order by looks of things. He's down in P3. Well, something has gone wrong for Julian as he's making his way through turn 8 right now. But what I can tell you, wherever it has gone wrong, and I suspect it's probably a mistake, and what I'm hearing in my ear was a mistake in Sector 1, but what we can say is that the Porsche driver now all the way down in P3 and a sizable way down compared to Hirikonen. So as a result, we do have a Ferrari now potentially in competition for P3 as it currently stands, as we see that our race leader continuing to make his way around. He's on his 21st lap right now, and surely Field's got to be considering coming in soon. What the fact we've only got 6.5 minutes of the pit window remaining, and in that time remaining, it is going to be one of those situations where I think for Field, he's got to be thinking to himself right now, well, given the fact that Voss has pitted, and obviously he can't see what Voss is doing by comparison, he might have it whispered in his ear if somebody is race directing for him, but it is the case that Voss has got traffic, and this is not good news for who was P2 at the time. He has got traffic, and in fact, he is struggling to get those tyres up to temperature, and he's made a little bit of a mistake there in turn 8, and that is a Porsche coming past him. So as a result right now, Voss in a very vulnerable position. This means effectively for who was P2 at the time, this is costing him huge time, as we hear there is a Stop and go 30-second penalty for Tardioli down in P21. I'll tell you more about that in a minute when I can find out. But focusing right now on the battle for the lead, if Field recognises this and pits now, I suspect it is going to be Field coming back out in the lead of the race, as we hear that Yep has now come into the pits. Richard Yep there from P6 at the time. The AMG driver have done a very strong first stint and kept it nicely together for Harwin Racing, and now coming into the pits as we look back up to our race leader, and Field definitely very comfortable in this race right now. He's got some traffic to clear, but he's catching it at opportune moments here. He's catching up. I think that's Bartle ahead of him right now. Bartle being all the way down in approximately P19 as it currently stands. Wait, that is not Bartle. My sincere apologies. That is definitely not Bartle. That is the Crew Camp Mobile, and he is all the way down in P18. So we're quite close there. That is Crew Camp, and as a result, that shows you the gap between our leaders and the midfield here, as we note that we have got Field really pushing around on circuit, and we can see that Crew Camp just looking to see if he can unlap himself a little bit there, but also trying to get onto a wet line in order to keep the temperatures of those tyres down a little bit, as we note that we have got pretty much everybody in P8 and down piling into the pits right now, and I think Yep is taking quite an extended pit stop, as Atkinson, Mustakis, Warren have all come in from P8 through to P10 respectively, and Kellgren, who pitted the head of that pack. Well, what I can tell you, whilst Field does not pit right now, and we look down to our P11 driver, that Kellgren making his way around on circuit in that P11 position, the Swede. Well, he can definitely gain some ground here, making his way around on circuit right now. He hasn't got too much traffic ahead of him, although he does have that Porsche who's just a little bit up. But Kellgren up into P7 with all the pit stops right now going on, and I think he's found himself a good amount of circuit as Joachim, as he makes his way through turn number 9 once again. Now, I can tell you that Harikonen is into the pits from P2. This is really the battle for P3. Ladier, by comparison, the French driver here, making his way through at turn number... Well, that is number... Pardon me, that as he makes his way into the corner here of turn number 4. My apologies, I was going to sneeze and cough at the same time. And he makes his way out of turn number 4 and up towards 5 right now. And Harikonen in the pit, where it's going to be the case that for Lardier continuing to make his way around, he will need to make his pit stop, of course. And Harikonen has essentially released him up into the P2 position, but does now have the pit stop advantage as long as the pit stop goes correct. And he is just getting the car sorted, as we see Carl Bomb also into the pit, and Walker staying out on the circuit for the time being with that 10-second penalty. The British driver here all the way up into P6, and I think just trying to give himself the shortest possible final stint, so that way he can go as aggressive as possible and make up for that 10-second time penalty by just getting as many places and then demoting himself down the order up into P4. Oh, goodness me, and that was a Bentley getting it very wrong there, coming out of turn number 5, and I think that was while the Bentley's further down the order. I'm not 100% sure. I think that was not Saridis, but whoever that was there, it was a disaster run through, and I think that might have been Moreira, and getting it, well, that was not Moreira, that was while the Bentley driver was quite close to Moreira as we're taking a look around the circuit, and that was Monrose who had that huge off there. He's been able to get back on the circuit, but Monrose having a major off, and as you know, now pressing around once again as we look around our order here and see who's hot and who's not, as GM Petro right now in P21 trying to find his way up into the top 20, but Voss all the way down in P20 right now, and Voss having a disaster. I think Voss has actually had a really horrific lap, because to be down in P20 as it currently stands, well, this is just giving Field the runaway win here by comparison, because he's all the way up the order, and indeed in P1 right now, and you can imagine that if things continue as they are, it is going to be the case that Field will just be able to bring this one home. And in fact, I've just been informed that Voss has pitted twice here, so that explains it. Thank you for confirming, Governor. He went onto the wrong tyres, and that's been confirmed by Governor ITR in the Twitch chat there, so that's why Voss is all the way down P20. So bad luck is striking twice for Voss right now, in the fact that in race number 1, it was the fact that it was a small mistake and an incident, whereas now it is the fact Pitt taking the wrong tyres in the pits, and Field, I think, is going to run away with this. Meanwhile, Lardier into the pits right now, and to give you an idea, his main opponent is Harikonen, and Harikonen on his outlap has just gone past our commentary box. He's gone across the timing line, so that means that Harikonen is now effectively up into P2 as it stands. Once the pit stops are complete, Walker and Queensborough come into the pits because the pit window is closing, so once he comes across the sector timing line, Harikonen will be confirmed confirmed the number 723 driver as our P2 man right now. This is a huge jump. Well, one person's misfortune is another person's gain, and it definitely is the case that Harakkonen is doing everything right now in the name of the game of keeping it consistent and clean, and the Ferrari driver up into P2. And I think it is going to be one of those situations where Lardier has returned, and this is to give you an idea. There's Lardier right now. The gap between these two is the best part of, I'd say, about 5 seconds, and that has made the difference in terms of the fact that Lardier made the mistake and also had the difficult run into the pits, whereas Harakkonen seemed to pick the right time to pit, and that's how Harakkonen has made the jump up to P2. As we continue to look further around on the circuit, the pit window's only got half a second to close, and Field is into the pits here for his mandatory pit stop, our race leader. I think he's just taking it nice and easy here, no pressure on him, he's got a good gap. And as a result, he can afford to just take it nice and smooth. As we see Yun now in P12, the Dutchman here. He's had a consistent race so far, just clearing his way through the traffic right now and chasing down our top 10. But we can tell you that Walker has served his 10-second penalty and is in P10 now. And having made his pit stop as well, the British driver pushing around right now for the Distinct GG team and doing a very solid job of recovering this race after that disastrous start, which was not his fault, but the pit window now closes and Walker pushes on all the same here, looking to move further up the order come the end of the race. Having made the pit stop and taken the 10-second penalty, I definitely think if Walker's able to keep this together, you could be looking at Walker picking up perhaps a P7 or a P6 by the end of this one. He's not too far back. We've only got Crew Cam up the road in P9, and we can see there is a Bentley there into the wall where the Audi S is, and it's just parked there right now. I think the car's pretty much done and said for it as he makes his way out of turn at number 13, and you can see that is, I think that's Yep ahead of him. In fact, that is Yep. So Yep has dropped a position to Atkinson, and what has happened there, I'm not 100% sure, but Yep, I think there might have been an incident between Yep and the Bentley that was spun at the Audi S's, but what I can tell you is that Yep is under huge pressure now from Crew Camp as they come to the timing line here. They're going to go on to lap number 25, and you can see that Crew Camp looking for a little move initially into turn 1, but not able to find it, so just putting the pressure on Yep and saying to him, look mate, I'm coming up behind you, it's wet conditions I know, but I'm going to be looking for that move if you don't get a move on. And you can see that Yep now starting to just feel the pressure. The number 65 driver here in P8 feeling the pressure from behind as he gets it a little bit wrong under braking there, and that's to snap the car into the apex of turn 4, almost going a bit too deep onto the rise of the camber through 4, and as they make their way over the hill of 5, we've got yellow flags ahead of them, although I think those yellow flags were only temporarily, and we can see that Yep really having a difficult start to the second stint, and he's got Crew Camp all in his mirrors as Crew Camp almost goes wide there out of the corner. As the camera pans round here, we can see that Crew Camp chasing after Yep, literally hand over fist, and as we ride on board here with the Bentley driver, you can see just how close he's getting. Crew Camp really coming alive right now. The Grumpy Monkey machine are really getting the grump on and chasing after the Mercedes ahead of him. But the thing is, of course, it's one thing to catch a driver here at Zandvoort, it's another thing entirely to pass. But I think Crew Camp is getting the phone number of Yep and getting ready to make the call to send the move as they make their way out of turn number 11 and up towards 12. And you can see that Yep able to accelerate here as we jump away from the onboard camera. And it is one of those situations right now where Crew Camp doing everything he can just to chase after Yep as they make their way through turn number 23, not 23, through turn 13 and up towards number 14, as we've got a car running off there, and that was a Porsche running its way, oh well, I think that's actually a Ferrari running its way across the circuit there, and we can see that Crew Camp going a little bit deep there, perhaps just a little bit distracted by the car that ran off, but able to keep it together and making his way out of the final corner to go onto another lap, as we see there Yep having to go onto the wetter part of the circuit to cool the tyres down. Yep definitely feeling the pressure right now as Walker is up into P9. Oh goodness me, and Walker having to take emergency action there to avoid a driver, and I think that is Mustakis behind him who's had a bit of an off, and you can see now Walker siphoned his way up into P9 and continuing to push. The British driver here doing everything he can. He wants to be towards that top 5 come the end of it. Will he be able to do it with half an hour to go? That is the big question, of course, as I can tell you that Kwiesma up into P3 right now. The Finnish driver here having had a very strong stop and indeed a pit window, and Kellgren in P4. Well, we saw that Kwiesma and Kellgren were changing positions, but Kwiesma has now got himself back in front, and Lardier has had a disastrous start to his second stint. He's down in P5 with everything that's happened over the course of the strategy, and is now starting to experience a little bit of pressure. In fact, is that Carl Bomb behind him? I think it is, and that is the Swede of Pontus Carl Bomb here from Team Kaiju, finding a way to catch up to our P5 man right now, and that Porsche just not in a happy place as they make their way down towards the Audi S's once again, and this is a real shock to the senses. Lardier very strong overall in qualifying, and we saw at Catalonia a very strong driver, but he just does not seem to, in the second half of the race, be able to maintain the performance of the opening broken in half. Could we see another Porsche drop out the top 5 here? We only have one left by this point as they make their way out of turn number 14 once again, and it is the big question for Carl Bond right now. What can he do? He's going to have the straight line speed advantage naturally over the Porsche eventually at the end of the top end, and this is where he's going to gain the most, is down the straight here, as we see in the rear view camera shot of Ferrari almost getting it wrong, going into the inside for all, coming out of 15. I think Carl Bond just has to really stay close to the back of Lardier and try to make him make a mistake. We've seen that Lardier has been vulnerable to mistakes, particularly at turn 8 in the past. Will he make another one? With Carl Bond can keep the pressure on, it may happen. But of course, getting close enough is one massive challenge here, because he's running that dirty as the track temperatures now come down slightly to 21 degrees. So that's going to help the tyres. It's not going to cause them to heat up as rapidly. But of course, our drivers will need to still be wary of the fact they'll need to run onto the damp spots of the circuit, albeit we have got the heavy rain coming down, but they'll need to run off racing line in order to cool those wet tyres down from time to time and make sure those pressures stay within the optimal window. But we can see Carl Bond really trying to find a way to catch up to our P5 man. But looking a little bit further out, I can tell you that in the battle for P8, the Harwin Racing driver, we're still in P8 as it currently stands. Crew Camp losing a little bit of time to over the previous lap, as we've got a car in the wall there, and I think that is Delcom in the wall there. Yeah, it is indeed. So Delcom getting it very, very wrong coming out of turn number 8 and having to recover the car here, as he's got a whole swath of drivers coming through. That the Belgian has got it fixed. The Valkyrie Esport driver has got the car back on the road and now makes his way back onto the circuit, but it is not good to have the offices from Delcom as he makes his way in towards turn number 10 once again, and we see we've got another pit stop for Nicholas Tardioli, and I think that is the case. That may be to serve a penalty or to fix the car. Something has gone very wrong there as we look around then further down the circuit, and I can tell you right now in P17 it is Ross Bartle, the South African driver, the second of the Grumpy Monkey machines here in the Bentleys, making his way around the circuit through turn 8 right now and chasing after Tobias Linden as they both make their way towards turn number 9, and Bartle here coming up against the yellow Aston Martin and will need to try and find a way to get it done through the corners, because that Aston Martin on the straights will just have a little bit of an advantage. But these two cars being very competitive one another, and Bartle being a very competitive driver, as we've seen time and time again, and looking for a way past right now and staying right there. And of course behind them they've both got the fast charging Voss, who after having to make that second pit stop will want to get up that order as quickly as possible. He's already up into P17 right now, and he will be looking to get himself at least towards that top 10 come the end of the race. He's still got 26 minutes to go, and Voss, we know how fast he is because he was on pole. He was battling for P1 all the way through until the pit stop window, and that mistake in the pits has cost him dearly, and he won't want any more damage done over the course of this race today. As they make their way then out of the final corner, you can see it's Linden leading the pack as they come around to complete a lap number 27 and go on to lap number 28. We can see therefore that we've got the Bentley there of Bartle heading to the inside here, defending versus Voss, but in the end of Voss just simply comes through. I think Bartle recognises the fact that Voss is going to be the faster driver and there is no point fighting him. He is going to come through like a scythe and he's going to cleave his way through the field. So what Bartle's doing right now, if you're wondering, he's just simply said to Voss, right, I know you're faster, get in the way of Linden, fight Linden for me and make him have to take a really bad line so that way I can catch up to the back of the Aston Martin and get in a position to strike nice and early in the race. Because remember, with the fact with Voss, he does have the faster lap, but he has technically the slower car on the straight. So where Voss will need to catch up to Linden is through the corners, and he'll need to probably do a move through a corner which is going to cost Linden enough time so that way Voss cannot be caught back up on the straight, and that's what Bartle will want to follow through on. He'll want to find that Linden has lost his straight line speed for a brief period of time, and that's where he'll come through, and Voss going for the move almost not quite into turn 9. You can definitely see he's all over the back of the Aston Martin driver who's going defensive into turn 10 right now, and Voss trying to cut back here as they make their way through turn 10 and up towards 11, but you can see not able to get the power down on that inside line with the water gathering on the apex there as they make their way out to turn number 11. But you could see Linden going a little bit deep but able to accelerate out the corner and build up the speed. It's so close between these three as they make their way up into the Audi S once again. Into the braking zone they go, and all of them keeping it together as they come into 12. Linden going a little bit deep but able to go defensive and park it on the apex there of turn number 13 as they now come out and head to the final two right hand corners of 14 and 15. And this is where if Linden can nail 14, he'll be able to run away for the run to turn 1 here, as the Porsche just will not have the legs come the top end going up into 5th and 6th gear in order to catch up. Or will it be the case that Voss is able to find something magical this time as they make their way out? You can see Linden immediately weaving onto the wet patches there to cool the tyres down and also position himself defensively defensively, but then Voss not able to find the place and not able to get close enough to go for the move up the inside into turn 1, and so he has to do it again. And this is what Bartel moved out the way of Voss for, recognising that Voss would eventually try to force a move on. Not able to do it so far, but you can imagine it will kick off very shortly indeed as they go into 4 here. And I think Voss at this point just bottling things up a little bit here in terms of getting ready to strike. He'll be analysing Linden throughout the lap and recognising where he's strong, where he's weak, where he's vulnerable, and that's everything he's got to play into his mind, and then figure out how to apply the pressure and go for the strike. But you can see that Bartel definitely falling back as it's into turn 8, and there's contact between Linden and Voss. Both drivers contact into turn 8, and that is a disaster for the pair of them. But as a result, Bartel now up into P16, the South African driver, able to pick up 2 places with 1 collision, and he didn't have to be involved in it at all. Now, in terms of the incident there, that looked as though it was the case that Linden just did not see that Voss was starting to come along the inside by a small amount into turn number 8, but I think they'll both be talking about that one after the race there. Of course, feel free to give your thoughts in the chat, of course, but we're going to carry on with the racing right now. But that's how close it is, and that is how difficult it can be racing in these conditions, because you just make one move offline and it gives the driver behind the opportunity to come up the inside. But then you've got to be wary of the fact that drivers will go for it, and Bartel able to capitalise on what happened ahead of him, as we see Field meanwhile just running away with the lead. And to give you an idea, this is Field making his way out the Audi S's right now. Meanwhile, Harikonen by comparison only just coming up to the Audi S's, approximately 10 seconds down our P2 man on the race leader, but doing a good job. And where is Krizma in all of this, you ask? Well, Krizma all the way down in P3. He has got Kellgren still chasing after him, has the Finn. Nico Krizma from Finland, the random racing team name race driver, making his way through the Audi S's, and I think Kellgren would love to get a move on him come the end of this race. They've still got 22 minutes to go. They've still got a long way to go, but we will wait and see as they make their way in towards turn number 14. And as they come through the corner here, it's a difficult one, and you can see Krizma just getting a little bit of snap oversteer that he has to correct. He has to eke off the throttle here, and Kellgren the closest he's ever been. And as they make their way down towards turn number 1 here, I think Kellgren's going to look for the move because he had a lot of momentum versus Krizma, but Krizma looks to the middle a little bit before backing off, and I think Kellgren actually had to back out the acceleration phase through turn 15 because he's no longer as close as he wanted to be. And as a result, the number 294 driver will have to wait again, the Swede who has been there, and these two have been inseparable throughout the entirety of the race. You have to feel for the pair of them and the fact they want to get away from one another, but they just can't seem to. They're attached to one another as they make their way through turn 4, and again Krizma just making a small error through the hairpin there, but it is the case that Kellgren is not able to capitalise. And now as they make their way in the long run up towards turn number 8, you have to imagine that at some point one of these two is going to make a mistake, because they're literally on a knife edge right now in terms of chasing after one another or trying to get away, and it's only going to end up one way. One driver will be coming home in that P3 position, and I think Kellgren will really want that to be in, but if he's going to get it done, it will need to be in the next 10 minutes because he just seems to not be able to find a way past right now. And if Krizma can settle it down and not make any more mistakes, then Kellgren's number may be up. Meanwhile, down in P6 right now, it is Lardier. He is chasing after Carbon, and after everything that's gone wrong for the Frenchman from GPX Racing right now, Carbon, to give you an idea, making his way through turn number 11, so there's a gap of about 3 seconds between the two of them, and Lardier will be trying to catch that up towards the end of the race, but we'll wait and see how that plays out, of course, between them both, as we can see Carbon making his way into the Audi S's. Further down, however, we've got Yun here in P12. He is being chased by Waller and White now. My apologies, Brandon, the American driver here, making his way through turn number 7 and up into way in the Ferrari. Warren's had a bit of a quiet race, a bit of a difficult one, a difficult start, but he's been able to keep his foot in it and keep pressing forward, and indeed catching up to Yun. And Yun's coming up to the back of Mustakis right now, and in fact, Mustakis the best part of about 15 seconds away, but closing at quite a rate here, and I think it may be the case that he'll be able to catch up to him over the distance, but I think it's going to be Yun versus Warren well before that, and Yun does in fact have a back marker ahead of him who's moved immediately out of the way there at turn number 11, and you can see that as a result of that, the Bentley's staying well off the racing line and obeying the blue flags, and it means that these two can continue their fight. Behind them you do have Svensson, however. You saw him briefly at the rear of the camera shot, the American driver there, making his way out of turn number 11 and chasing after that battle for P12, but he has got a sizable gap to close up, and it is going to take some time indeed to close up that gap, making his way out of the corner right now, out of the Audi S's, and charging after the guys ahead. But as we look back to our P3 driver here, we can see Quizma again feeling that pressure from Kjellgren with 19 minutes to go here. And as we take a brief sip of water, you can imagine that the Finn will be gasping for a drink of his own come the end of this if he's able to hold on to this podium. As they make their way out of the corner here and up towards turn number 12 for what is the 30-second time of asking. I think Kjellgren just backing it off a little bit. You can see that the gap between the two of them has opened up a little bit over the course of this lap, and I think Kjellgren's got to analyse another approach, or he needs to save the car up a little bit for the next laps in terms of what he's able to achieve here. And as we look at our timetable sheet right now, ladies and gentlemen, what we can tell you is that in terms of the intervals, you can just see how much of a gap is expanding between our different packs of drivers here, as we note that really filled in a world of his own right now. And well, to give you an idea, he is 26.7 seconds ahead of the rest of the field as we move that and come back to the battling here for P3. But really, Field just running away with this race. And Harikonen, well, he's only a little bit. In fact, Harikonen has not had the best of laps last time around. He's had a 155.7. So this is a battle for P2 developing here between Harikonen, Quizma, and also Kjellgren here. And it is the case as we see there's traffic ahead for the three of them as well. There's a huge amount of traffic here. This could be an absolute nightmare in the fact that we have essentially a load of cars trying to unlap and battle one another. We've got an Audi going into turn 8, which Harikonen is going on the inside of, but then you've got a McLaren and a Ferrari battling ahead of them for position. And as they make their way through the corner here, Harikonen's going to catch the traffic at an ideal moment. What about Kjellgren? Also Quizma, they make the way through, and Quizma not able to get on the power out of turn 9, and Kjellgren looking for a move here is the Swede, as he tries to go for the cut back out of turn number 10. He's not able to find it, however, but back markers getting in the way through no fault of their own. It's just the way they've been caught up over the course of the race and battling one another, and now they're starting to respect the blue flags, of course, but Quizma really losing out massively with all this, in the fact that he has lost that gap that he had built to Kjellgren, and Kjellgren now catching up very rapidly, and Harikonen, I think, breathing a sigh of relief that he had that back marker just to space him a little bit. But Kjellgren, look how, goodness me, look how close he is to the back of Quizma. As they make their way out of the corners once again, into 14 they go. And as we look back from Quizma right now, you're riding on board with the Finn in P3. We're going to see that Kjellgren will catch up as much as possible. And coming out of the corner here, you can see that neither driver able to get the power fully down. And that's where Kjellgren just loses it. In turn 15, he can't quite get the nose of the car to rotate through the corner. And that's how much he's losing the time as they close up to one another under braking into turn 1 once again. And it is so close between these two. And to give you an idea, on that last lap with the traffic, it was a case of 45.0 from Quizma, a 44.9 for Kjellgren. That's how close it is coming back and forth between the two of them as they continue to make their way around on the circuit. And as we jump back to the exterior cameras here, you have to imagine that if Harikonen can't find a way of pulling away from this pair, he could be seeing a three-way fight here. And that's the last thing that Kevin will want after such a solid race. And pretty much the dream of picking up P2 here, the number 723 driver, he's only got 16 minutes to go. He can't afford any mistakes now. Looking further back, however, we can see that Carl Baum, by comparison, in P5, he is making his way through turn 8 right now, and he is gradually closing up to that battle for P3, but it is a long way up the road. As we can see, this is where the battle for P3 is happening, and it is the best part of approximately 10 to 15 seconds up the road by comparison as they make their way through turn number 11 here, and the Finn under a huge amount of pressure. As we can see Harikonen having to go past another back marker here, and again losing some time at a critical point as we see the back marker moving immediately out the way for Quizma and Kjellgren, and as a result the top, well, these three all coming together, and indeed it is looking as though that Quizma and Kjellgren could be on course to the P2 battle here with 15 minutes remaining. It's going to be very difficult to predict who out of these three is going to be on the second and third step of the podium as they make their way out of turn number 14, but Quizma gets it wrong and he goes out to the gravel, and Kjellgren is promoted to P3 with one small mistake from Quizma, but Quizma will try to come back. There's no doubt about that, but he's got a back marker now who wants to try and find his way back past and unlap himself here. And I think that Aston Martin needs to be very, very, very aware of the fact that he is trying to unlap himself versus the leaders here, and immediately he backs out of it in the end. But Kjellgren up into P3 with a small mistake from Quizma at turn 14 on lap number 34. And it is that one small mistake which is the difference between winning the position and losing it. But meanwhile in P5, Carbon can only imagine what he could get involved in, as he is still a good chunk of time down, and as a result he's making his way through turn 4 right now, but he's still got time, and if either of those two come back to blows again, you can imagine he's going to be there to capitalise on it. As Lardier is trying to catch up for P5 right now, he's in P6, but he does have a gap of approximately 6 seconds to catch up to Carbon, as behind him he's got Atkinson, and Atkinson has run a very solid race so far, but he does have Yep getting closer and closer to the back of him, and also we can see that with Yep in P8 right now, he's got a nice gap to Crew Camp, and he can focus on hunting down the Bentley driver with the remaining 15 minutes to race. A fifth of the race to go, and we can see that Yep there getting a little bit of snap oversteer into turn 8 there under braking, and actually understeering off the apex as a result of having to use the brakes in order to settle the rear end of the car down. But I think for Yep, he's doing everything he can right now. He's pushing it as much as possible, knowing that P7 is on the cards if he gets it right. He's not that far off of Atkinson, but Atkinson doing a very good job just to keep it together right now. And Crew Camp by comparison in P9, he's got Walker catching up to him rather rapidly here. On that last lap, to give you an idea, Crew Camp a 44.0, Walker by comparison a 43.5. Walker literally closing down on Crew Camp by half a second, lap on lap here, and Walker knowing that he could have been in the top 5 today. As he's, hold on a second, he's been promoted here to P9. What's happened to a driver? Well, somebody's got it wrong up in front. We will find out for you very shortly who's taken the fall down the order, but what we can see is that Walker has been promoted up a position here as they make their way through turns at number 14, and we can see that Crew Camp going a little bit wide out of 14. That's going to cost him the speed out of the corner, but I think it's going to be the case that Walker needs to be closer than this to attack as they make their way then up towards that timing line, and as they come across here to go on to another lap, it is going to be, well, Walker in fact in P10, so that was a mistake on our timing screen there, folks, my apologies, but what we can see, oh, and Walker's got it wrong. He's experienced the oversteer in turn 1 and pushing on the limit there. He's able to get it back together and keep the P10 for the time being. Mustakis, to give you an idea, is only just coming onto the start finish straight now, so Walker really pushing the limits and going too far, looking to try and get himself further up the order here. And I think at this point what Walker's got to think about is, okay, I've recovered to P10, I know I could be higher up the order, do I really want to push my luck after getting so close to the back of Crew Camp only to see it fall? Well, meanwhile we can see that in P3 right now, Kellgren chasing after Harikonen, and you can see at the rear of your camera shot, Kwiatsma losing some time here to Kellgren. So Kellgren seemingly the happier of the two Aston Martin drivers now that they've separated from one another, and as he makes his way through turn number 13, you can imagine the Swede will do everything in his power to try and snatch that P2 off of Harikonen with 11.5 minutes to go. As we look a little bit further down the order, we can see that Yun still in P12 ahead of Warren. Warren at the rear of your camera shot there. And we can see Brandon Warren here chasing after Yun, as Yun goes a bit wide there at turn 7, in fact getting a lot of understeer out of the corner, and as he went over the hill, as a result Yun losing all that momentum, but he's able to keep the track position for the time being. But Warren will know he can go for that potential move very shortly, as we're hearing that Voss has now made his way up into P15, making that recovery drive after those 2 pit stops of course. But Warren hunting down Yun and doing everything he can, as Svensson meanwhile he'll be looking on at Mir Svensson, the American driver here, making their way out of turn 10, riding high on the apex curve then, almost sending the car off into the gravel, and making the way round right now. Will want to get a bit closer as Voss hunting down the race leaders in terms of the battles for P10, but he's not going to be looking at a top 10, I don't think, unless something drastic happens right now. As you can see that Field is coming up behind him. The driver he was battling at the start of this race is now coming through to potentially lap our P15 driver right now, as they're making their way through the Audi S's, and Voss will be only too aware of that, and I'm sure will begrudgingly let the leader through in due course, as our leader just continues to put in lap after lap. And this is phenomenal form from Field, not a single mistake from the Swiss, and doing a very good job indeed so far. But looking back to our battle here for P2, we can see that Harikonen has opened that gap up a little bit, and Kwiatsma has definitely fallen away. I think Kwiatsma is going to have to settle for P4 at this point unless something happens ahead of him. He just doesn't have the pace to compete with Kellgren and Harikonen, who are trying to hold on to their respective positions and make their way through to the end on that podium. But of course Kellgren would love to be ahead of Harikonen come the end of this one. Meanwhile, Car Bomb down in P15, sorry, in P5 right now, coming through turn 13, we should say, not able to catch up to Queensma at a rapid rate. In fact, struggling a little bit for pace right now is Car Bomb, at 47.0 on that previous lap, and I think will be just trying to eke this one home in P5. But he has got Lardier, who is catching up right now. The Frenchman, only the best part of 4 seconds down on Car Bomb, making their way out of the final corner and onto another lap. And you can see just how he's been eking and closing that gap down lap after lap right now. And at the rear of your picture is Atkinson in P7, who has got a nice comfortable gap to Yep. I think Yep overdid it a little bit on his tyres earlier on in this stint, and as a result now Yep, after pushing the limits for so long, is now in a position whereby he's got to cool it down. Meanwhile, Crew Camp, in P9, the South African here has got a nice gap to Walker, who's a bit further back by comparison. Walker having that mistake, of course, through turn number 1, only laps ago, only moments ago, and Walker chasing after Crew Camp once again and closing down that gap. He closed it down by 7/10 of a second on the previous lap with only 8.5 minutes to go. I don't think it's going to be possible for Walker, but I think Walker is now in an exercise of limitation, as I'm hearing there's a drive-through penalty for Yep here. Now, what is this for? That is a very sudden shock to the senses, and that drive-through penalty is for our number 65 driver. And we'll wait to find out what that was for, but the stewards have assigned a drive-through penalty to Yep, and that is going to completely flip the order. And I think he would have thought he got it done here, only to find out it is going to be a drive-through literally as he's coming to the end of the race here with 8 minutes to go, and that is not what he wanted to have seen, and that is going to definitely promote Crew Camp up to P9. Indeed, a lot of drivers will be gaining from this one massively. But speaking of gaining right now, what I can tell you is in our pack further down the order that Warren is really pushing the limits here, chasing after Yun, and in fact he is going the best part of what is 4/10 of a second faster than Niels Yun ahead of him, the American driver, but he just cannot seem to find a way past at the moment as they make the way through turn 9 once again. And it's been like this for a good number of laps right now, where Warren gets close through sectors 2 and 3, but then the AMG just opens it up going onto the start-finish straight. But perhaps Warren can find an advantage now. Perhaps he can find a way of closing it out. As you can see, he looks to the outside through turn number 11. I think this is going to be, he's looking for potential ways to try and get essentially Jung to go deep into a corner, so that way he can look for the cutback as Yep pulls into the pits here for the drive-through penalty. And I think a lot of drivers are going to gain a position as a result of this. Even the guys here may gain or be right in that fight when Yep comes out of the pit. But you can see right now that Warren all over the back of Yun as they make their way through the Audi S's and now head down towards 14 and 15 once again. And as they press on all the same, we can see that now Warren is going to fall back a little bit as they start to make their way out the final corner into that start-finish straight, but Warren able to maintain the apex speed as much as possible for the VRS Satellite Racing team. But now it is the case that as they come down towards turn number 1, will Warren look for the move here? He's dead in the slipstream. In fact, he's very close in the slipstream. He's the closest he's ever been, but he just cannot find a way in immediately. And yet we should point out, actually dropping down to P10 after everything is said and done with that drive-through penalty. So losing 2 places there, and Crew Camp now up into P8 as a result of it. Now looking up towards our P2 battle, we can see that Harikonen under huge pressure now from Kellgren. In fact, Kellgren the closest he's ever been and still closing. And to give you an idea on that last lap, Kellgren 3/10 of a second faster. These drivers are not going slow, by the way. Harikonen a 43.7, meanwhile Kellgren a 43.4. And as they come onto the timing line here, we can see that Harikonen going defensive to the inside, and it's going to be made to go around the outside for Kellgren as they go into turn 1 with 6 minutes remaining. Will Kellgren find a way all the way around, or will he go for the cutback? He looks for the cutback, but Harikonen can just plant it on the apex there, and that's brilliant car control by Harikonen just to keep the car there. And as a result, now Kellgren has got it all to do again. And the thing is, it's going to be so difficult for the Aston Martin driver to find a way through in sector 2, because that's where the Ferrari is going to be the stronger of the 2 cars. All Kellgren can hope to do here is be as close as possible to the back of Harikonen and perhaps try and force him into a mistake, psych him out into a mistake as they make their way through turn 8, and perhaps that will give them the ability to make a move into 9 or 10 as they make their way then up towards 8 as they come through the right-hander. Right now you can see it's a case that the gap starts to open up as Harikonen, as Kellgren gets a 5-second penalty. Now I'm not sure what that's for, but that has just come in, and that is going to flip this completely upside down. So that is for the number 294 driver here, as we are just taking a look at our boards, and we can't see a report here for 294 as they make their way around the circuit. In fact, we can. And it's an instant between them and car number 40 on lap 25. And it's a 15-second penalty, in fact, for avoidable contact. So Kellgren, having done all this to get as close as possible, in the end, an instant earlier on in the race, as a result, much earlier on in the race, now he's seen a 15-second penalty applied to his race time. So even if he passes Harikonen here, it will be a drop down the order for Kellgren. And as a result, he'll want to get past Harikonen as quickly as possible, because if he can get past them, break away with the 4.5 minutes remaining, he might be able to salvage a couple of positions here. But right now, if Kwiesma can stay there in P4 and stay within a 15-second window, he is guaranteed to pick up the bottom step of the podium. As we see, Kwiesma goes wide out the final corner. Kellgren in the slipstream of Harikonen, but not able to find a way past this time. And in fact, Harikonen having a really strong run, but he's going a little bit deeper, but not deep enough to cause an error. And as a result, Kellgren now in a really horrific position, because this is Kwiesma who you're looking at right now, who is in P4, and he's only the best part of about 6 seconds down on these two. And Carbom as well, just coming out of turn number 1 right now, and he could be given a chance of being promoted to P4, as we hear that Krewkamp is making his way out of 8 and Walker into P9 as it stands now. Walker having made his way further up the order, he's up into P9, as we are hearing that Warren has finally made his way. Well, no, in fact, there's been somebody who's had a major off somewhere. It's Yep. Yep has dropped down the order to P15. That's why everybody's getting promoted right now when all is said and done, and Warren's still chasing after what is Yun ahead of Nils Yun. It is such a difficult race for these drivers now, and coming to the end of it, of course, it is one of those situations whereby everybody will have tired legs, and with 3 minutes to go, particularly if you're in a battle like this for Warren versus Yun, as we can see Yun going defensive immediately, Warren getting closer and closer to the back of the Mercedes, and that Ferrari now will not be struggling for pace down the straight as they make their way in, and you can see Yun trying to force Warren to take the smallest possible outside line here, trying to make it as awkward as possible into turn 1, but the American says no and stays there for what is expected to be 2 more laps in the case of these guys at least. And as they make their way into turn 4 right now, Warren definitely looking ready to strike within the next lap. But we can see Harikonen having broken away from Kellgren after it seems as though the wind has been taken out of Kellgren's sails come the announcement of that 15-second penalty, and I can understand how Kellgren must feel right now. But if he keeps pressing on, you can see Kwiesma getting closer in the background of your picture there. That's the Aston Martin at the rear of your camera shot, all the way in the back, and that means that Kwiesma will be ticking up that P3 through the penalty award there. But meanwhile, coming back to our battle for what is P11 out on circuit right now, Yun versus Warren, as they make their way in towards turn number 10. Once again, through the right hander they go, and Warren just so close, and Yun literally getting oversteer out the corner. He's having to push, he's having to go into an uncomfortable zone with regards to applying the throttle coming out of the corners, and you can see he's not comfortable right now, is Nils Yun, as he makes his way out of turn number 11 and up towards turn number 12. The next gen racing driver here coming up into the braking zone, and can he hold on for one more lap after this one? Will that be the big question, of course, for Yun? Can he hold on to that P11 position as he makes his way out the corner? As we're hearing there's a penalty, a 15-second penalty for Voss down in P14. And to give you an idea right now, you can see this is the battle for P13 by comparison. You've got Voss there, and then you've got a race leader just watching on behind. The 2 ITR racing drivers, of course, as Svensson and Voss. Well, Svensson will know he's picking up P13 when Voss has to take that 15-second time penalty. But we look back to our battle right now for P11, and you can see that Yun having made a bit of a breakaway this time from Warren. Warren not as close as they go on to the final lap. And as Yun makes his way out the corner here, it is a case that I think that Yun is doing enough right now. He's got one more lap to go at least in order to be able to hold on. We will wait and see, of course, how that's going to play out. But meanwhile, looking back up front, we can see Harikonen has done everything right to hold on to that P2. He's pulled away naturally from Kellgren and now just seems to be running away with this P2 position. And Kwiesma, to give you an idea, is catching the pair of them gradually, but not at a rate fast enough in order to put Harikonen under pressure. And indeed, behind them, Carl Bomber is a long way back. You can see him at the rear of your camera shot right now coming out the final corner, and he will be looking to try and keep 15 seconds between himself and Kellgren to pick up that P4 position, will Carl Bomb. But meanwhile, our race leader, well, Phil, you've got to give credit to the Swiss. He has literally run this one all the way through to perfection. He started in P2, had a difficult start, not able to take on Voss immediately, but then was able to get past Voss, took the lead, and then from that point onwards, it's been a case for as it's just been music to his ears as he makes his way out of turn number 11. Only 4 more corners to go right now, and it's been a phenomenal run for the CHF Motorsport driver, the number 420 car. And compared to Catalonia, I suspect this time it won't be the case that the win will be taken away from him from a post-race stewarding penalty. We'll wait and see, of course, because it's only said and over and done. But as he's got 2 more corners to go right now, he won't be thinking about that. He'll be thinking about how he was the one today who turned up in the Porsche 911 and was the master in the rain. It's going to be a win for Jesfield from Switzerland as he comes across the line to take the checkered flag in race number 2 of the season. Meanwhile, in P2 in the end, going down towards the Audi S's right now, it was a race that started off on a rather interesting note for Harikonen. Found himself around drivers having incidents, particularly the incident in turn 1 for the P4 battle. But in the end, the Ferrari driver, through just considerate driving and keeping it consistent, has found himself making it home on the second step of the podium. And as he comes through the right-hander here, he's going to bring it home in P2. A brilliant drive from the Ferrari driver. Harikonen comes across the line for ITR in P2, and in the end, with regards to P3, it will be Kellgren out on circuit, but Kwiesma will take P3. Nico Kwiesma, the Finnish driver here. It'll be Carbom in the end who comes home, I suspect, in P4, and in Lardier, well, I'm not 100% sure whether it'll be P5 or not, but P6 out on circuit for Julian as he comes across the line here. A difficult race today. Atkinson bringing home a P7, a fantastic drive from the OTL racing driver in the Bentley, the Brit doing a great job there, and then Walker, what a recovery drive, a disastrous lap 1 to recover all the way to P8 in the end. Crew camp in P9. Mustakis will be coming home, the rest of our top 10. It'll be Mustakis who rounds us off here. We believe he doesn't have Young close behind him as the Greek driver here makes his way through the final sets of corners through turn 14, and in 15 he goes, as we can confirm that Yep did have a drive-through penalty, and that is what has dropped him all the way down the order. But we can see Mustakis here coming around the final corner to bring it home in P10. What a fantastic drive from Mustakis, and indeed he'll be very pleased with this one, will the Greek driver. As he comes across the line, it'll be Yun holding on to P11 when all's said and done, and Brandon Warren in the end coming into the pits in P12. The American driver, they're not able to defeat Yun come the end of it. A difficult race, but a brilliant one for all considered. But that is to confirm, ladies and gentlemen, as he makes his way into the pits, Jesfield coming home with the race win, and then it is Harikonen in P2. And then once that 15-second time penalty is applied, it will be the Finn of Nico Kwiesma who finishes in P3. A fantastic job through our top 3. And, well, we look forward to interviewing him on the podium in a short while indeed, as they all make their way home right now into the pits. And all our drivers, I think, will be looking for a good bit of rest and relaxation with all that complete. And we will be back with you very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, for our post-race podium interviews. Don't leave us just yet. We'll be right back. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, let's interview our race winner, Juez Field from Switzerland. Hello, Juez. Can you hear me, Juez?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Firstly, congratulations on winning today's round 2. A very tricky race in the wet. How does it feel to have brought it home in probably one of the most difficult races on the calendar?
Yeah, what a race, man. It was so difficult just trying to stay on track, and wow, there's so much luck involved too. I was so lucky I didn't crash anyone, and yeah, with the blue flags I had no problem with that this time, unlike last race. It was just perfect.
Oh, it's brilliant indeed. It must feel a huge sigh of relief given how last week at Catalonia you had the win only to see, because of the incident with a blue flag runner, that you ended up having the win taken away from you. But this time a complete change of circumstances. However, you didn't have it all your own way, given the fact that you did start off at a situation where you were P2 running behind Voss. What was it like for the opening laps running behind the race leader?
Yeah, it was quite difficult because you can't really see much in the spray of the cars, or the one car that was in front of me. So I just kept going to not to make too much mistakes and stay with him as long as I could. And then unfortunately for him, he made a mistake in that fast sector. I could go through, and it was just amazing.
So with that, when you saw that the mistake had been made by Voss and as a result you're able to take the lead, did your approach to the race at that point change, or did you stay with that mindset of keep putting laps? Because your pace was very consistent throughout, and we saw that there wasn't really anything troubling you over the course of the race. It was a repeat of Catalonia in the way. Once you had the lead, there was no change. You kept driving to a particular pace.
Yeah, my main focus was just trying to stay on track. Everything else, doesn't really matter, because I saw Voss was going the same pace as I did, and it was about 2 seconds all the time. And he pitted much earlier than me, but I don't know what happened to him, because I think he was twice in the pit lane. So pretty unfortunate for him.
Yes,
but the mindset was...
So just to clarify, we did hear that he pitted and took on the wrong tyres in the end, but he did have quite a bit of traffic when he came out the pits, because that was the big concern from our perspective. He'd pitted and come out into traffic to essentially give you the lead, even if he'd only had to make the one stop.
Wow, yeah, that's unlucky for him. But he had such a great pace, and he would have deserved the win.
Well, by the sounds of things, I think you might have a championship rival going forward between yourself and Voss. And speaking of rivalries and upcoming rounds, how are you feeling for Imola next week?
Imola is not my strength, especially with the Porsche. It's quite difficult to not lose the car on the curbs, because they're pretty high. And as always, I go for high downforce setup, because it's a lot of fun and I'm the quickest with that. And but it's a great track, a lot of opportunities to overtake, and we'll see.
Well, we look forward to seeing whether you can potentially make it 3 out of 3 on circuit next week. But until then, enjoy the win, enjoy the very wet bottle of champagne at Zandvoort, and congratulations on the win today once again.
Thank you, sir. Have a great evening.
You too. Well, you can definitely hear there, Yves very happy with the win, and this time expecting the win won't be taken away from him. Albeit stewarded decisions are what they are, we can't grumble about them, but definitely a dominant run by Yves, and as a result with some fortune there as well with what happened to Voss, but you can imagine that the rivalry between the two of them is going to extend into the rounds ahead. But moving on from our race winner, let's come on to our second place man, Kevin Harrikonen. and we'll very shortly be able to get him in the commentary box here for his interview. Hello Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello.
So firstly, congratulations on the second place, Kevin. What a phenomenal race. How does it feel?
It feels pretty good. I mean, starting from P9 and P2 at the finish, so pretty happy about that.
It wasn't the easiest race for me, so as you say, coming from P9 and the incident at Turn 1 in particular, just take us through what you saw, because we had that incident between, I think it was Zuga and the McLaren 720 there, of I think it was Walker at the time, and you had to try and find your way through that.
Actually, on the brake, I literally can't see anything with the production of water, and I just brake and find my way on the right line. I guess I was pretty slow, so I can dodge the traffic ahead of me, and then yeah, I just managed to go through. That was pretty insane, but I was pretty stressed at the moment.
And then following that, of course, you started gaining places through just keeping it consistent, other drivers making mistakes, and also drivers picking up penalties left, right, and centre. Just take us through what was going through your mind at that point in particular, because I think at one point you're probably thinking to yourself, well, I'm on course to say P6, P5, and then you're just up in P2 out of nowhere.
Yeah, I managed to gain place to go to P3, and then on the pit, my teammate Matisse, who was actually P2 before the pit stop, just made a mistake on this pit and get the dry tire. So you have to pit again to take weight. So like this, I managed to get the P2, but I was just like trying to stay on track and do my best lap possible. Actually, I did a pretty good lap. I think if not the best of the race. But yeah, I just tried to keep my read, my pace, and the main focus was to stay on the track.
And talking about keeping it on track, towards the end in the final 15 minutes in particular, you had Kjellgren and Queensberg both catching up to you rather rapidly. Just take us through the pressure that was going through your mind when you had Kjellgren in particular right on your six.
Yeah, that was pretty insane. I made a mistake on the third sector of the track, and I was stuck on the grass, and I can't rejoin the track because some blue flags was catching to me, so I have to let them pass before rejoining the track. And it was so intense because I made a mistake, so I know I could make another one. I have to not make other mistake, otherwise I would lost my position. And yeah, he was pretty close. I want to congrats to Blue Flags. They were pretty good on this track. They were pretty friendly. So that allows to keep a good pace. And at the end, he just get a 50-second penalty. So it was pretty much game over for him. But even with that, I tried to stay ahead of him, like to send a message or something, because I want to deserve this P2 and not get him through penalties.
Oh, completely understandable. You want to earn it out on the circuit, and that makes sense to me. Being a sim racer myself, it completely makes sense. So really, having had a very strong round today at Zandvoort, what can we expect from you next week at Imola?
I have pretty tough time at Imola, especially on that chicane with the large curb on it. I struggle a bit, so I have to train. But yet again, I will train with my teammate Matisse, who has a pretty insane pace on this track. And thanks to him, I got the pace I had on this track. So hopefully we're gonna have the same pace on Imola and manage to fight for at least a podium.
Well, we look forward to seeing what you can achieve in the Ferrari 488 in a week's time at Imola. But until then, congratulations on the P2 once again, and enjoy your evening, sir. You deserve it. Fantastic result.
Thanks, mate. See you next time.
All the best. So a very happy P2 man there, Kevin Harikonen, and you could really get the feel there when he was talking about the fact that the race start having to go through a situation where an incident occurred on ahead of him, and he just had to find a way through. He just had to hope that the way he controlled the car through turn 1 meant that he was able to clear the incident and then move on and overtaking drivers and also picking up the places with everything going on around him to be in that P3 position to then pick up the P2 with Voss having that disastrous pit stop. Really was in a way music to his ears, but he didn't have it all his own way. And indeed, that pressure that was exhibited on him by Kellgren and Kwiesma just behind was able to hold on. But again, really like that as well, the fact at the end saying that he wanted to prove the point of holding on to that P2 naturally rather than just letting our man Kellgren make his way through in the end. And that is the sign of a race in Harikonen, and we look forward to seeing what else he can achieve later on this season. And Imola should be a good one for the Ferrari. But without further ado, let's come on to our P3 man, and that is Nico Kwiesma. So we're just waiting for him to jump into our interview room. And here we go. Hello Kwiesma, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, firstly Nico, congratulations on the P3. It must have been a roller coaster out there. How do you feel?
Yeah, thanks. I'm really surprised. After practice and qualification, my pace was around P10 or between P10 and P20, and now being P3 is a bit surprising, to be honest.
So, with that, just take us through, because we've just heard from Harikonen about the turn 1, lap 1 incident, and you started pretty close to Harikonen. What was it like having to find your way through turns 1 through to 4 in that opening lap?
Yeah, I was lucky I was inside, and a lot of the carnage was happening outside, so I just went past like 5 or 6 cars around there. A couple of the first turns. So yeah, nice start of the race to avoid that carnage there.
And then outside that, one thing we noticed throughout the entirety of the race was the fact that yourself and Kellgren were very close on pace, and every time we looked at, say, Kellgren, we'd see yourself next to him. You'd either be slightly behind him or slightly ahead. Was he your sort of car that you matched your pace to throughout the race, or was it just a case of you two were literally identical on pace stakes? You were so close to one another.
Yeah, I think we had a really nice battle, and we had quite similar pace. In the end, I think I made a couple of bit too many little mistakes, and he got ahead of me in the track, but then he got the penalty for some reason that I don't know, and I got the P3. But yeah, really nice battles with him throughout the race.
Definitely, and I think one of the things that we noticed also when he was starting to catch up, and yourself, you were both starting to catch up to Harikonen with his mistake. Yeah. You seem to be right there behind the pair of them, but then you started to just fall off in the last 5 minutes. Were the tyres starting to go, or was it a case you were sort of, well, let them fight and catch up to them if they start fighting more?
Yeah, I think after I made that mistake that Kellgren got past me, and then I made a couple more little mistakes, and it was suddenly 5 seconds between, or almost 5 seconds between us. Then I just thought I managed that, and I take P4, which is a really good result for me, and just don't make any big mistake and lose any more positions. And then again in the end, I think they were fighting with Harikonen, and I got like a couple of seconds again in the end, but yeah, and then he got the penalty also, which got me the P3 in the end.
Well, moving on from today to next week at Imola, can we expect another chance of a top 5 or a podium from yourself at the Italian circuit?
Yeah, let's see. I like Imola track, so hopefully I can be good there also.
Well, we have our fingers crossed for you, but until next week, congratulations once again on a brilliant 3rd place finish, and we can't wait to see more of you come the Italian circuit.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No problem. All the best.
Yep, same. Bye.
So brilliant to hear from Nico there, and you can tell from Nico's perspective there how in the end it was a bit of a surprise. Well, that's the way you come across, a bit of a surprise in terms of being on the podium come the end. Again, I think he was very happy to have that battle with Kellgren, and really if we could have the opportunity to interview a driver, for me it would be Kellgren from lower down the field today, because a very difficult race for Kellgren, and I think he will take from that the result that occurred and the fact that he ended up finishing off the podium. But again, having that battle with Quizma all the way through, and you could hear in Quizma there how he was grateful to have Kjellgren as a rival all the way through the race. And I reckon if those two continue to match their pace as they have today at Zandvoort, we could be looking at a season-long battle between the two Aston Martin drivers. As we've seen at Catalonia, they were inseparable, and once again inseparable here today. The difference being small mistakes on Quizma and then a penalty as applied to Kjellgren, and that's what traded it off in the end and saw Quizma finish in that third place position. All three of our drivers also looking up ahead to Imola. Of course, have mixed feelings about it, but much like what we've had from Catalonia to Zandvoort, it's changed. And whilst we have had a single person who has finished twice on the podium now, it's been the case of 5 out of our 6 drivers on the podium have been fresh drivers. So as a result, we look forward to seeing whether we're going to have a completely different podium come round number 3. But really, with that, that concludes our racing for today. Thank you very much for watching, and if you do want to know more about the Next Gen racing community, why not check out the Next Gen Racing website? So that's nextgenracing.co.uk. Alternatively, the Facebook group, so that's facebook.com groups Next Gen Racing. Also want to give a big thank you and shout out to our partners, the SimGrid and also Coach Dave Academy. You can check out their respective websites there or Google them, the SimGrid or Coach Dave Academy in Google. And that only really leaves us to look on then to next week. Imola, the Italian circuit, a very tricky circuit, and indeed we're not sure what the weather's going to be yet. Hopefully it's not going to be as heavy rain as what we saw at Zandvoort, but you never know how the clouds can move and those weather conditions can come in. But until next time, it's goodbye for me. I have been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next week, remember to stay well, stay smiling, stay frosty, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.